Oh.
My
Stop
goodness.
putting so much stuff
I
on it.
know.
Did yard work. Excited to put my house on the market. I'm downsizing. My son goes off to college in August, so it's kind of a big place for just me.
Did you get that out of the way?
Oh, he won't come back. He won't come back. He is ecstatic to go on campus. I bet you did. See you, Boulder.
How are you doing, Councilmember Sarah?
Not at all.
So,
No, he's really looking forward to it.
wear that at some point. I want to see it.
Finance. Yes. Hi, good evening. Yes. Yes.
There's a plan.
Would love to be a finance officer for a sports team. Sports. Avid baseball player. Avid sports everything watcher. No. Decided trying to pursue that. Scholarship. Right. What he did do is ROTC program. He's going to follow in his sister's steps. That's who is second lieutenant in the Army. Sorry, first lieutenant. Is it first? Which one's higher? Whatever the higher one is. First, second.
Second lieutenant.
Yeah. But Jeremy says we're good to go. Second lieutenant. She goes to be captain in August. See you, Boulder. No, actually, she had quite the opposite. Yeah. Really good school. They work you hard, but they give you a lot of latitude for academic job. Leaves the same. So basically, you get a physical workout and good academics. And a lot of leadership. Yes.
From the above speakers.
MOS. She's in Signal Communications. Not her degree. Her degree was in media journalism. So as soon as she graduated college,
I didn't finish
she
what I was
crammed
going to
all summer long on computer networks. It's like, why would they put me here? I don't know, but okay, I can do that. I guess a leader is a leader.
Yeah, my brother has a good friend that went to Westwood.
Nice. Uh-huh.
And
Thanks,
got
Mike.
into signal.
Thank you.
Tonight's my
Are
goal.
we
I
all
spent the
good on
weekend
fourth?
buying a car, which we didn't find
The
one.
fourth.
But we found one this morning. Honda CRV,
Emergency management is queued up.
all-wheel drive, 2011. It's only 80,000 miles. Not bad at all.
Got into signal.
Yeah, I think it'll be a great car for me, coming and going from work. And then I end up going to the mountains once in a while for work. Otherwise, I would have gotten a hybrid, but I don't want to plug cars in. Not yet, anyway. They're so expensive. Do you have one? Yeah.
Plus, if he stayed in and
Yeah.
got his retirement, he's got both.
Yeah.
That's what we're
I
pushing
am.
for.
I
She wants to try
am.
and
And I see
sign up for
the doctor
JAG
again today.
November, so
Something didn't work.
that's a tough one to get into.
I must have an allergy, but I want to see an ENT because it's gone on far too long. It's been January, first week of January, and it's constant tickling, raining, and it doesn't matter what I take. Sudafed, Claritin, whatever.
That's what she wants.
I've never had. But if you can get
Right now.
Seattle, Washington.
But her husband is.
I don't know who else to give that to. I don't think it really matters or amounts to anything, but
Of course.
Are we ready? I don't think mine is on. Is this one working? Ooh, it is now. Boy, I got to sit really close. Welcome to Englewood's City Council study session on this Monday, April 8th. And our first item up tonight is the emergency management information and direction for, and our IT Technology Director Margaret Brocklander is here to present to discuss emergency management findings. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having us. So we are the task force that was appointed by Interim City Manager Hargrove in early February. And our goal was to assess the readiness of emergency management within the city and report back to City Council. So that is what we are doing tonight. Our scope of the task force was very narrowly defined. We were to review the...
Are these really working? It doesn't. It seems like she's talking loud, but it doesn't seem like it's
Hello?
magnifying.
Better? Closer?
You have to be so close.
Kiss it? No, it's fine. So our scope and our purpose was to review the federal, the state, the local laws, and the policies, review the current state of emergency management, and then present the findings. So what we have tonight should hopefully complement what has already been presented to council in the past on emergency management. We haven't spent any time or a lot of time defining a lot of the role for an emergency manager. What we focused on was the laws, the policies, and the guidelines from federal and state. I did put one slide in just as a reference to define emergency management. This is the definition by Homeland Security and FEMA, as well as several emergency management professional organizations. This is their definition, which is defined as a managerial function charged with creating a framework to reduce vulnerability and cope with disasters. Their vision is to promote a safe, less vulnerable community with the capacity to cope with the hazards and disasters, and their mission is to protect the communities by coordinating and integrating all of the emergency management activities. The federal, state, local laws, policies, and guides that we referenced while we were doing our research are all listed here, and these are the laws and the guides and the policies that we'll cover tonight. So the first one is the Robert T. Stafford Disaster Relief and Emergency Assistance Public Law. This is a federal law, and the law is designed to bring an orderly and systematic approach to federal disaster assistance for state and local governments. And to do that, it is by encouraging the development of disaster preparedness, assistance plans, so our EOP plan, programs, capabilities, organizations by states and local governments.
Excuse me, just a quick question. Is this in the deck?
No, I'm looking for it too. So we have a different deck than you have.
So you were provided the last 3 presentations of emergency management, and then this one should have been in your packet as well.
I don't think it is.
It isn't. And I just updated with the,
Okay,
just like a half,
I'll make
about
sure
an hour
that you
ago.
get a copy of this.
Okay.
Would you like a printed copy of this one? I think that might be somewhat helpful. I mean, the reason that we get the packet ahead of time is so that it's some valuable discussion, and we already have some foundation for the conversation. The other is to make sure that the public is aware of what's going to be discussed, and that's just disturbing. It's not very easy for them to go ahead and participate, or us.
And I will say that mistake was undoubtedly mine because I approved it here, so I will do my best not to. Is that on?
So
Do that
what
again.
we have tonight is what part of what you think? It starts out with, let's see, the first page, there's options. It's the options. So you're giving us all the pre-info before the options, right?
What was included in your packet was the 3 previous presentations provided to council in April and May. And then there are some other handouts that were included in the packet.
Right.
And then this presentation.
Okay, so there was another presentation that you're doing here.
This presentation is new.
Okay, right.
And
I've-
this presentation did not make it into the packet.
Right, and so the presentation that we have, though, is that incorporated into this one, or no?
No.
Okay, great.
That's just for informational purposes.
Yes, that's correct.
The council communication contains the information that she's highlighting on the
Okay,
PowerPoint.
from the letters. Correct. Okay, great, thanks. All right.
So I apologize you didn't get this one. We will get you a copy of
I
this
think
one.
now that we know what happened, we don't keep looking for every page. Great.
Well, just as a point of information, it is our council policy that we don't have new material done at a study session like this. It's handed out that we haven't had a chance to see, so just making that point. Not that we're going to follow it.
I will say that the information that is in this particular PowerPoint is included in the written packet, the council communication. The PowerPoint is just a highlights of what's in the council packet. So the information is the same. If you would like to postpone this discussion, we can do so when you have the packet in front of you.
Council, what's your pleasure on this? Do you want to continue without, this does look like it's a summary of this, so.
I would like to continue.
Councilmember Martinez?
I would like to
Yes?
continue moving forward with the
Okay.
discussion.
Councilmember Cuesta?
It does seem pertinent. Yeah, I mean, ideally, I think we'd all have the presentation, but if the information is covered in the summaries you just stated, Manager Hargrove, I'm happy to move forward with it.
Councilmember Wink?
Although, as Member Barentine pointed out, our policy does state that we should have all handouts ahead of time. Because of the particular nature of this, I would like to move forward and not lose time on our discussion about this.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem, you want to continue?
I actually do believe that moving this forward is important, but I also believe it was important for us to have this information. I'm okay if we move ahead, but I'm not sure we should act on it unless it's obvious. Thank you.
Right. Well, yeah. Okay, great. Councilmember Sierra?
I'd like to go forward with the conversation as well, but I think I may be a little bit confused on what exactly is going to be presented. Do you mind just flipping through the slides real quick?
Sure.
Just to see. Because I think what we have in our packet is just a double up of the presentation.
That's what Interim
Right,
City Manager
okay.
said.
It's not all, yeah.
Councilmember Barentine next. So maybe flip through while.
What we were told was that the information on these slides is in the summary here. I don't believe that it is. And my concern then is that we're going to be basing some information off of information we didn't have to go ahead and make sure that we put it in with all of this. In order to go ahead and just look at this as not a summary of what is there. So because there are certain legal guidelines that I spent a lot of time looking back and listening to previous meetings on what we did, I kind of don't appreciate having information there that I'm not sure that I've had a chance to look at, considering the issues that I would like to bring up on what we're doing. This is very serious. This is extremely important that we get this done, and I don't want to delay it, but I also don't want anything done where the community doesn't believe that they have full information because they already believe that it's being done pretty haphazardly, taken too long, and been done behind closed doors. So I'd prefer not to keep doing that.
Okay, we have enough to move it forward. I don't think anybody's trying to do anything behind closed doors, and we don't take action tonight except to suggest that something more come forward, and at that point we can say hold the phone or whatever as well. So let's get as much information as we can tonight. Could you flip through the slides really quickly so that
Yes.
you can see what
Right.
is on each?
So this is just a summary of all of the information that we're bringing forward. There's really nothing new. We're highlighting the laws and the policies. So we're bringing forward some highlights of several federal laws, policies and guides, state laws, guides, and then we're also looking at the municipal code for the city of Inglewood. So we're looking at the Stanford Act, Homeland Security, Preparedness Goals, CRS 2433.5, Part 7, Emergency Management, CRS Title 29, Article 22, Hazardous Materials, The Comprehensive Preparedness Guide by the Colorado State Disaster Emergency Management, and then looking at the municipal guide and what we have in our own code, and then really looking at the Nims, the Incident Management System, in depth. This is just a training matrix of suggested training throughout the city at various levels.
Her to keep flipping through really fast. Is that what you wanted, Councilmember Sierra? Or does she's going through each one now?
And then the priorities of what we feel need to be accomplished within the city, and then our own recommendations. That's fine?
And is that it?
Yes.
Okay, so we have quite a longer one.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
This is in part included in all of the previous presentations that you've received, but this is diving much deeper into the laws and the policies and the guides.
Okay. Thank you. You can go back to where you were if you want.
Okay, so we left off on the Stafford Disaster Relief and Emergency Assistance Act. And this act is important. This is achieving greater coordination and responsiveness of disaster preparedness and relief programs by encouraging the development of comprehensive preparedness and assistance plans. So this is our EOP plan, Emergency Operations Plan. City Council should have received a draft of the Emergency Operations Plan from 2015. It is a draft. It was never adopted by the city or council, and it has never been practiced throughout the city. Next up is the federal Homeland Security National Preparedness Goals. And this is highlighting an approach to prepare for threats and hazards that pose the greatest risk to security. It also describes a vision for preparedness and identifies the core capabilities necessary to achieve that vision, which is 5 critical areas of prevention, protection, mitigation, response, and recovery. These are the 5 critical mission areas for emergency management. Next is the state law. So this is Colorado Title 24, Principal Departments, Article 33.5, Public Safety, and Part 7, Emergency Management. And there's 4 paragraphs within here that we just wanted to highlight. One is the minimum composition of a disaster agency is the director or coordinator appointed and governed by the chief executive officer, or in our case would be the city manager. Also, each agency shall prepare and keep current an emergency operations plan. We do not have a current emergency operations plan. And then lastly, prepare and distribute a written statement of emergency responsibilities and the chain of command. Well, the city has included emergency management in the municipal code. However, it is not robust and fully adopted emergency management plan. And then I have an outline of the municipal code coming up in 3 or 4 slides, I believe. Next is the Colorado Revised Statutes, Title 29, Local Hazardous Substance Incidents, Article 22. The city has adopted Resolution 105, which is the Arapahoe County Multi-Hazard Mitigation Plan, and that was adopted in 2015. State of Colorado Disaster Emergency Management Comprehensive Preparedness Guide. A couple items here to highlight is that municipalities can elect an emergency management agency. If this has occurred, the information in the guide is relevant. If the municipality does not have an emergency management agency, the county ultimately has responsibility to provide emergency management services. However, home rule municipalities, the city of Inglewood, must have a system outlined in their charter for how they will manage emergencies and disasters. And I believe the charter's next, which it is. Okay. So what I found when I looked in the charter is Chapter 7, the Public Aid, Mutual Aid, and Emergency Response. There is an emergency response authority paragraph in here designating the city manager as the authority. However, what has been suggested is that that be expanded to what are the duties of the coordinator? How do we address mutual aid agreements? What is the succession of authority for emergency management? Those are the things that we need to include in our charter. Now I'm going to hand it over to Tim, and Tim is going to talk about Nims.
NIMS is an acronym for the National Emergency Management System. Emergency managers thrive on acronyms, and going to their meetings is like they're speaking another language. NIMS came into being in 2003 with a presidential directive. It was actually published in 2004 and evolved into a present form, which Department of Homeland Security put out in 2008. NIMS is a comprehensive incident management system, covers preparedness, communication, information management, resource management, command management, and ongoing management and maintenance. It's not something you can get one time. It's a process that continues. You have continuous training, and you have to be devoted to the NIMS process. Why do we need NIMS? It's a consistent approach in all levels of government to work together to prepare for, respond to, and recover from incidents, regardless of cause, size, or complexity. The adoption of NIMS by the state is a condition for receiving federal preparedness assistance. NIMS is applicable to states, local governments, private sector organizations, critical infrastructure owners, operators, non-governmental organizations, and organizations with an active role in emergency management. When they refer to NIMS, they refer to a whole community approach. This would include us involving businesses and citizens as well as just government. It also applies to elected and appointed officials who are responsible for jurisdictional policy decisions. This is a NIMS training matrix which basically outlines the different NIMS classes that all responders, first line supervisors, midline supervisors, senior level, and elected and appointed officials should have taken to be familiar with the concept of NIMS. Many of the classes you can do online. Some of the classes you have to do in a classroom. They're very informative, and it helps assisting people understand the concepts in the same language that the state and federal partners are going to be using during an emergency. Inglewood has been a member of the Denver Urban Area Security Initiative, which is short for UASI, for many years. It was covered by the fire department. When the fire department went to Denver, the police department continued attending the UASI meetings. City of Inglewood is currently a voting member of the UASI board. They're very strict in their bylaws. If you miss 2 unexcused meetings, they kick you out of the voting membership. So we have maintained that over the years. At your next city council meeting, I will be bringing forward an IGA, which is an updated IGA with UASI. They just updated it this year. It's been reviewed by the city attorney's office. It basically just says we'd like to continue to be a voting member with the UASI group. Like I said, you'll be seeing that next week in your council packet. Now I'll turn it over to Maria.
Thank you, Tim. So some of this slide lists some of the priorities that we've identified. As Margaret talked about, those charter modifications, since we are a home rule city, managing the completion and adoption of a true emergency operations plan, building off of that draft from 2015, preparing and distributing a statement of the emergency responsibilities, so who does what, what roles do people play in different emergencies, and that might differ from the type of emergency that we're facing, which is where the Nims comes in. Conducting continuous internal training on the EOP. So as Tim mentioned, it's not a one and done, but an ongoing commitment to training at all levels within the organization. Implementing and managing that Nims training program, participating and continuing to participate in regional emergency management initiatives, and also tying in the community and business preparedness education. So not just within staff, but reaching out to the community as well. And then finally, exploring different grant opportunities that might be out there. And with that, our current recommendations are to, as we've talked about before, is consider a full-time emergency manager position that would report to the city manager. And again, we feel that that's really an appropriate step for the city to take. There are many other cities approximately our same size that have a dedicated emergency manager position. And by reporting to the city manager's office, they're able to then reach out to resources and direct all the city departments and work cooperatively with all of them. For the immediate next steps, what we're looking for is to direct the city manager to provide a supplemental appropriation for the remainder of 2019 to pursue that, as well as including that full-time position in the 2020 budget. If it wasn't to go, if the council didn't want to continue that route, then we would continue with the current approach, whereby we would pursue a formal agreement with Arapahoe County to provide those emergency management efforts on behalf of the city. So with that, the group will stand for comments or questions. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Council questions to start off with? Councilmember Sierra.
So regarding the two options, one for Inglewood to hire the full-time manager position or the emergency manager position, or to contract that out to the county, would we be following Nims if we were to follow if we were to go with the county approach? Because it does sound like there's still a need for the training, there's still a need for community outreach, which would not be included within the county approach. So would there still be a need to appropriate additional staff or another resource to handle that aspect of it?
Arapahoe County has indicated to us that they would help us with the training of our employees. That would be on an a la carte basis, if you will. The part that kind of falls by the wayside is that the interaction with the business community would not be near as robust if the county were doing it as if we were doing it internally. So that's kind of the major difference is you don't have the a la carte system if you have somebody in-house to manage, keep track of the training. And you don't have near the interaction with the community or the citizens with the Arapahoe County proposal.
Could I interject?
Sure, go ahead.
One quick clarification. We have not had detailed conversations with Arapahoe County or defined exactly what that contract would look like. So part of that would be directed by council and what the needs would be. So.
Yes, thank you. Councilmember Barentine.
In 2014, the reason grants were given out was because everybody was kind of redoing their emergency operation plan. The Arapahoe County redid theirs from 2015 to 2020, and there were classes that you attended, that Rose Lynch attended, that our fire marshal attended. I believe that the only person who's currently certified as per the requirements would be our fire marshal, I believe, at this time. I don't know that anybody else is certified. But I have been presented by some people in the community documentation that at least there were some classes that were taken, although we've made it very clear publicly that we have no documentation for the $85,412 that we took in a grant and how we spent it. That being said, Arapahoe County did go forward with theirs and has a standing approved emergency operation plan currently. And so right now, considering that that's 2014, and we were supposed to have it, the emergency operation plan draft was completed, and apparently from some conversation between the mayor and city manager Keck, there was some brouhaha between Rose Lynch and the fire marshal at the time. That's on tape for, I believe, one of the meetings. I can give it to you. And then it didn't get brought to council. So we have at least a draft that I think is pretty close, but it's going to take some work. Arapahoe County has a plan in place, a pretty good plan from what I've looked at. And so I believe that we probably would be better off going with Arapahoe County, which is already a set-up plan that we don't have to worry about because we need something today. We have been talking about this and having meetings about this and the regurgitation of the same PowerPoints since October of 2017. And then the meetings that happened in March of 2018. And it continues on with people in positions knowing full well that we did not have a plan in place and this council was not made aware of that. So I think if we're going to go, at least at this point, since this entire presentation, PowerPoint that you gave is part of a handout, not what we were given, and I'd like a little bit more chance to look some of that over. But if I have to make a choice, we need something now, and what's available now that's professionally done, approved, vetted, is Arapahoe County. And then we can spend some time to try and see if we can go through our plan, and hopefully it doesn't take 3 or 4 years to get that done. There's a few more questions that need to be answered as we're going through this process as well. But at least for a beginning, we need to go with somebody that's already got it done, knows what they're doing, and then we can, I believe what's in the PowerPoint is something around $60,000 to $70,000. And then whatever the prorated portion of the year, and try and see if we can decide what we're going to do for next year. But we can't move somebody in fast enough to cover the rain that's coming next month, or the problem that's coming tomorrow if somebody else should show up at this building with a gun, or if ransomware happens, or if another flood. So I share the frustration that people are having, that we have to do something now to cover ourselves, make sure we have something in place as we're going through this process. That's what I would suggest we do.
Just for a point of clarification, Councilmember Barentine, you said something about a mayor having some brouhaha with Mr. Keck. I don't know who you're referring to there.
You.
Regarding when?
And it was in between the break at one of the meetings. I will give you the specifics in a second as soon as my eyes unfuzz. It was regarding the grant, the $85,412 that was done. And what the belief was, I think you were asking that you thought the positions for the emergency coordinator that we had several positions who were designated doing that, and you made the comment to him, I thought we had somebody paying for that, and that wasn't true, but I mean, they were only being paid in part by the grant. And he said, yeah, and then he said, well, we have the plan come forward from the grant, and then he explains to you that there was some problem with Rose Lynch bringing the plan forward.
Excuse me, I'm going to ask you to stop right there. I do not recall this conversation. Is it
it's on tape? It's on tape.
Okay, great. Tell me what day, and I'll look it up.
I wouldn't remember it because I wasn't.
Tell me what date, and I will listen to it.
Sure, I'll look in for
Okay,
that.
great.
I'll
Thank
look
you.
through my notes for that. Also, we do currently have a designated people, and if that's not the case, we had the fire marshal come here and say that she shares the designated emergency management position between her position and yours, Mr. Englert. And if that is not the case, and we have a fire marshal who is so confused that she doesn't know what her position is, then we have some bigger issues to deal with. And I would have preferred that she was sitting here alongside you to go ahead and answer some of these questions, and believe in the future that should happen.
Right. I'm going to let our city manager speak.
Whoever I am.
Yeah. No.
Thank you. Laura Herblin, as our fire marshal, was never appointed the city's emergency manager or a co-emergency manager officially. Both she and Tim Englert were tasked by then City Manager Keck to help out in the July flood, but this has never been an official part of her job or a designation. That we have several members who have, several staff people who have taken extensive training in emergency management is absolutely true, but none of them have actually been officially appointed to that position as far as we can determine.
And point of clarification, the city manager.
Excuse me, Councilmember Barentine, I'm going to let others speak now. You cannot respond every time someone does this. Let the next, we've got 2 people ready to speak here.
That
I'm not sure
information
which
is
is next.
inaccurate, and I wish.
Okay,
that
next when I call you on you, you can do it. No problem, okay?
Okay.
Councilmember Wink.
I would ask the mayor,
Thank you, Mayor.
to do that.
So when this came before council in 2018, I think before Member Sierra joined us, 3 of our 6-person council wasn't prepared to move this forward. And what I don't appreciate is that staff be blamed for this. I mean, for example, our flood last year is such a tiny drop in the bucket of possibilities in terms of disasters that can occur within our city. It's as major as it was for us. That's so small and minute. The job of an emergency manager cannot be a shared responsibility on a part-time basis with a full-time manager. So I appreciate Interim City Manager Hargrove, you sharing that this wasn't an assigned position to Mr. Englert and the fire marshal. But furthermore, I am 100% in favor of hiring a full-time individual to fulfill these duties. What goes into the role of a city manager is so vast, and every dollar, I think the Pew Charitable Foundation said that every dollar spent in preparing for disaster recovery saves $6. So it's 6 times as much to try and recover if we haven't done any of that work in advance. Furthermore, this is something that every city should have. It's really expansive. The preparation stage, the mitigation stage, the recovery stage, that entire cycle, there are 4 components of it, and all of the work that goes into those 4 components, when you really understand that, and some of it's referenced, much of it's referenced in the citations we heard earlier this evening, it really necessitates a standalone person. So I think, sure, if something were to happen tonight, we need some help, and it's good that the county is there to support us, but I think it would be a grave mistake on our part to not assign that duty and take this very, very seriously, so that just now and into the future, as we heard, it's not a standalone one-time thing. This is an ongoing effort, ongoing documentation, ongoing policies. Some of these policies also need to be in place before FEMA will recognize that we will lose a great deal of reimbursement options if certain policies aren't adhered to before the emergency takes place. I mean, there's a lot in this, and I want us to take it seriously, and without going through the litany of what it is, I will say that I'm in favor of appropriating the funds and looking to hire someone who's a resident city manager or emergency manager underneath the role of the city manager.
Thank you. I just want to stop for a second. I heard you push your button, but the light isn't on. And I looked, I thought maybe you had turned it off, but it's, okay, it's not working, so I think you were next then, because I think you did it before. So Mayor Pro Tem, go ahead.
Thank you. I appreciate what Councilmember Wink said about every city should have an emergency plan. It is required by law, and we've been operating without a plan. Apparently, the 2010 plan that came in the request, I actually read that plan. It is an amazing plan. But I would like to know when that was codified. When did we make it an ordinance? Because I looked through all of the 2010 agendas and could not find anywhere where that was codified.
Could I quickly
Go
respond?
ahead, Senator.
In our research, correct me if I'm wrong, council has never codified the emergency management plan for the city.
So we do not have a plan. So if we got an emergency manager today, how long would it take for an emergency manager to get a plan in place? Anybody know?
Well, that's,
Well, I believe our typical hiring process, we'd have to develop the job description, probably based on other agencies. That would take several weeks, and then typically we have a 3 to 4 week open period where people submit their applications, and then we go through the review those applications and the interview process. So at least a couple of months to go through that.
So we're looking at 2 to 3 months to even get them on board. How long is it going to take them to get a plan up and in place? By the time the flood season is over, we need an emergency operations plan right now. I believe Councilmember Barentine's suggestion was absolutely correct that we probably should hire Arapahoe County right now, get Arapahoe County on board, get them in to train staff. And I understand that Commander Englert, that it would be more robust if we had our own. Personally, the staff needs to be trained, and we need to be working with the citizens and with the businesses, our own staff. In looking the little jump drive that we got with all the flood data on it, I believe part of the problem ends up with staff also, because there was a email chain between Mr. Keck and between the fire marshal, and I believe you may have been included, Commander Englert, and Mr. Keck kept asking them for information from other staff that needed to respond. The problem is we have staff that have other jobs and they can't get this all done. And so the bottom line is we're not going to be able to get it done that fast, even if we hire an emergency manager. We are looking for a city manager, and I believe if we hire Arapahoe County now, we can take care of that, and in 2020, then we can decide whether we want to move forward with hiring our own manager. I am not against hiring our own manager, but the flood was a microcosm of what could happen if we had an emergency. We are not prepared, and we need to move forward quickly on getting this in place, and then talk about the emergency manager position perhaps in the next budget cycle.
Councilmember Martinez.
Thank you. I echo the sentiments of Councilmember Wink. We started these discussions in depth a year ago. Had we made the decision, and I really wish we did at that time, to move forward with a full-time emergency manager, we would be pretty much ready to rock right now. I was really, and still am, in favor 100% of having our own dedicated person. It's too much work to add on to somebody else's job. It is too important of a job to be kind of secondary to anybody's tasks. It needs to be its own full-time position. I've felt that way from the beginning when we talked about it a year ago. I still feel the same way today. We didn't have majority to move forward on a full-time person then. We've had some, situations between now and then that reminds us that we need to take this seriously and we need a full-time person to do this. It's too much and too important to tack on to somebody else's job. I'm a little bit frustrated with this because, had we implemented it a year ago, we wouldn't even be having this discussion today. Things would have gone a lot smoother in July last year, and on and on. And so I am in favor of moving forward with a full-time person. I agree we need something right now, but I don't want to do another interim Band-Aid solution. This is a really big deal, and we need to have it full-time. And let alone another important piece of this is the community portion with the businesses, the schools, the hospitals, the business community. They all need to be involved, and I don't want to skip that part. That's a really important part, and I think it warrants having a full-time person. Said this a year ago, said it every time we talked about it, still believe it. Would like to see us move forward in that direction.
Thank you. Councilmember Cuesta.
I would like to start with some of the prior presentations, and there's some, I think, presumptuous statements being made here. The last presentation we had on this was May 14th in 2018. The flood was in July. The notion that if we would have gone forward with an emergency manager, we would have even had one in place by July when the flood occurred is entirely incorrect. We wouldn't have even had one hired, let alone there be a plan in place. I think there's way too much Monday morning quarterbacking going on, and really blame shouldn't be assessed at anywhere at this point. I think we're all in agreement that we are woefully unprepared for an emergency if it were to happen tomorrow. I agree that I'm not sure that we have time in the short term to go through the entire hiring process of an emergency manager, bring them on, go through the plans. I think that in the short term, we do reach out to Arapahoe County. As I'm looking to Mark Wolf's presentation back from May of 2018, there were pros and cons to the full-time manager that we hire as a city staff versus Arapahoe County. Those aren't quite as fleshed out in tonight's presentation as I would like to see them. That seems like the quickest avenue to get something in place right here, right now. That was Arapahoe County. It looks like that's the less expensive of the two as well. That was $60,000 a year. I believe we're still in the question portion of this. And so my question is, do you know, can we prorate a contract with Arapahoe County? Can we bring them on for the next 3-6 months while we pursue an emergency manager and then discontinue that service if we were to get a full-time emergency manager into place?
I'm very familiar with the emergency manager for Arapahoe County. He's very willing to work with the city. I think they would be very flexible. I can't speak 100% about, what the contract would look like. I could certainly reach out to him and get more information, or I could have him come and speak before you if you'd like that.
Sure. I'm in the same boat as I think really everybody up here is how can we get this resolved as quickly as possible? I know that there's different perspectives on reaching that goal. To me, Arapahoe County seems like the quickest way to get somebody right here, right now, get staff trained, get the EOP finalized, and then we can continue down the road of a full-time city manager if that's what councils agree to. At a minimum, though, I would like to just see how quickly we can I guess get the full details on Arapahoe County, what services they provide, what gaps they fill. If we bring Arapahoe County in, does staff feel comfortable we've covered all our emergency needs, or do you feel that there's still holes that we need to get plugged? So that would be for me, but again, I appreciate the urgency. I think everybody up here shares it, and at this point in time, to me, it seems the quickest way forward would be Arapahoe County, but certainly I'm sure there's more details on that too. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Sierra, do you want to chime in at all?
No need for the light, is there? I agree as well with Councilmember Cuesta and a few others here that I think the best approach would be to get the county involved, just in terms of just getting a plan in place. But I think just based off what is required to keep staff, community involved, that there is a need for a emergency manager position, but that can wait until 2020 and focus on the county putting together a plan in place.
Thank you. I'm going to weigh in at this point, then I'll come back to those who have done second lights or third lights. First of all, I do not want to spare any expense on this because Arapahoe is cheaper, whatever is not an issue for me. It's how do we get the best service? In the meantime, I think we need something, so I would like us to explore Arapahoe for right now, and then I would like us to put in the budget a full position for the next year's budget, and when we hire our new city manager, let them be the hiring person for that to make sure that person is building their team in the way that they want to, and the good, the kinds of things that we learn in the next whatever 6 months with an Arapahoe County kind of contract. So that would be my preference. I also think that, yes, a year and a half ago, even before then, 2015, we've been talking about this, and council's been the obstacle on this. Would it have prevented a flood? No, a flood was going to come regardless. So we can't blame anybody for a flood. A flood came. We got to do what's right next, though. Would it have probably change the angst for 2 to 3 days because it took us a while to get going? Absolutely. So I wish we had voted, you know, a year and a half ago to go with someone, but we didn't. So that's what it is. We move forward. We learn from that mistake and do it right. And so I am not in favor of putting this off and waiting 2 or 3 months to hire somebody. I do think we need someone now, and we learn from it, and then put it in the budget for a full-time permanent position, and then the city manager that we hire perhaps we'll learn that it works with Arapahoe County. We don't know. Councilmember Barentine and then Councilmember Wink.
I think part of the frustration, Councilmember Cuesta, is that if you don't know your history, you're going to repeat it. And we had $85,000 provided to us to take care of this in 2014 so that we would be ready for 2015. People were paid, and a whole grant established on the expenditure of that money, and we have no record of it. We don't have documentation of how it was spent. Then that starts to lead to, are we being good stewards of the money and being accountable to what we're doing and having the end product? The end product was well known by the city manager at the time that we didn't have an emergency operating plan that was current. Margaret Brocklander, when you went through your ransomware and in your presentation in March, you stated that there was a 2000 emergency operating plan. I don't know whether that was just for your department or for the city, but what your comment was is that that wasn't pertinent to 2018. I agree. That's why money was given in time and effort and energy doing a grant, and we didn't seem to follow up on it. So what I'm trying to make sure is that whatever process we go through, that we follow through, make sure that there's accountability, and that we end up with the end product that the taxpayers are paying for. The $87,000 might have come from Homeland Security and the feds, but it's still taxpayer dollars, and it was meant for a purpose, and that purpose didn't happen. Then it became obvious that our city manager knew, not only from the February 17 incident here in this building, but then again from the incident that happened for the ransomware. And so that's why we began talking about it in March of 2018. And you are correct. God couldn't have gotten us all of that fast enough probably to go ahead and do the flood. Then my angst comes in is that we had 2 years prior to that and knew. This council did not vote down an emergency manager. The city manager did. In the budget meeting for 6/25, he took it off the table, and how he took it off the table was he said he was talking to Littleton and that they were going to co-share that. He took the position off. This council never, none of us ever took it off the table. He took that position out of there. There were several positions listed, and if you go back and listen to the meeting or look at the budget documents, the city manager took that off. The city manager, who was well aware that we didn't have a current plan, who didn't follow up on the $85,000 in the grant, and maybe council should have done more diligence in following up on all of those things, although I don't think we get into those kind of minutiae. We didn't even have the line item to kind of follow up. We didn't know that they had gotten rid of those positions when they got rid of the old fire department, and I'm very concerned that we have an employee that believes that they're the designated emergency manager, and we don't have that issue. At least the interim city manager has made the comment that she was, along with Englert, responsible for the flood. And when we have constituents being answered on core requests from our interim city manager, and that's not as much her fault as what she was handed, is that there is no plan. We don't have anybody in place, and we have not prepared reports detailing the city's past emergency responses. That's illegal. All of what we've agreed to with the organizations we're already with, that's not legal. We cannot declare an emergency like you did. We cannot get funds, which means that I believe that some of these organizations were not told the truth about whether we had an emergency operating plan. So I want to make sure I wasn't told the truth. I have asked now 4 months to get a copy of the emergency operating plan and told there was none. I have a document here that Mark Wolf says we have one that was, the current emergency operating plan was adopted by City Council in 2010. I've got documentation from the IT that it was 2000. I've got budget grants that say we did one in 2015, and now we've got a draft that apparently just sat there and did nothing. So what I want us to learn from this is that if we move forward and we appropriate money for this, that we have some oversight, that there's something, that this is just not more money going down the drain and accomplishing nothing. I'm very frustrated by that happening, and I'm very frustrated that we seem to be so ill-prepared, had 3 emergencies, and we're sitting here a year later and still don't have it in place. And we had a draft that we could have at least been looking over and doing. We could have been hiring somebody. So I want us to at least understand the history piece of this, because everybody seems to be so confused about what's going on that it makes it very difficult to just say, you know what, ignore it, water under the bridge, too bad, that was yesterday. But I am afraid that we are going to continue to repeat that history if we don't handle things differently. The same thinking that got us into this problem will not be the thinking that gets us out of it. So that's why I did the research. That's why I looked at all of this documentation, because every time I asked a question or the citizens are asking core questions, getting different answers and different information. And if we aren't able to come to the same page, it's going to be very difficult for us to move forward.
Thank you. Councilmember Sierra, or is it Cuesta? Okay.
Are we still in the question phase?
No, we are, well, we're, in this, we can do both. So whatever question, and
yes,
let's
thank
get
you.
some direction. I'd like to take the next 5 minutes and get direction.
So it seems that in the midst of the flood, that the fire marshal, and I can't recall her name offhand, and then Commander Anglet were put in that place of emergency manager. If I'm by Mr. Keck, if I'm understanding that correctly.
Co-emergency responders to help, but not, I mean, it wasn't their job title, but he asked them to take on that task during the flood.
And so, and I guess to that the end of that sentence there, that was during the flood. That does not remain currently. So as it stands right now, there is not anybody designated at all for that position.
I am by default, by law.
Okay. Thank you.
Which is what Council or Manager Keck believed all along too. When we didn't get somebody, he was it. Councilmember Sierra.
I think I already stated my direction in which way I wanted to move forward. But if there was an emergency operation plan that that is put in place by Arapahoe County, if we go down that direction, or if we put an emergency manager in place, we would actually talk about that. We would actually set up a study session and go over the emergency, the EOP, with all of council.
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you.
As we move forward, we would have to bring it to council, and it have to be adopted by council going forward.
Thank you.
To our knowledge, there's never been a plan adopted by council. We've not found anything.
Councilmember Sierra, what is your suggestion for moving forward then? That's what I'm going to do, round robin, and then we're going to be done.
Preference is short-term move forward with the Arapahoe County.
Okay, and do you want anyone to be looking, do you want us to be looking at budgeting a full-time position or putting one in so that a new manager can find one? Okay.
Correct, yes.
All right. Councilmember Barentine, let's stick to that as the next step, okay? What do you want to do next?
I already stated from the beginning that I believe Arapahoe County already has a setup here. I want clarification from a comment from a director or fire marshal said that she believes that she is the emergency manager. I am tired of skirting around these kind of issues. That is what City Manager Keck told agencies that he went for funding for, that we had an emergency plan in place and we had a designated employee. Now, if that's what he needed to do to get that, if he was willing to lie, then I want to make sure that we understand that. If that isn't, then I want to make sure why an employee believes that they have a position that they do not, because she seems to be a pretty intelligent person.
All right.
So I would like it to stop being stated as a fact until we vet this information out and figure out what we're doing, because that is not what city manager
So
Keck
you'd
said.
prefer to do nothing until something aligns with whatever you believe her role is?
No, I said from the beginning that I want a Arapahoe
Okay,
County
great.
in there because
Thank
they
you.
already have the expertise and they have it set up,
Thank you.
which we were already working with them in 2015 when we had the grant.
Thank you. Councilmember Barentine, that's great. Thank you. I'm going to start with Amy, or Councilmember Martinez.
I would prefer a full-time person, but if we need something now, I would be fine with going with Arapahoe County, but as long as we concurrently plan for having our own individual person at the same time, so we can get that moving along.
Councilmember Cuesta.
I'm looking forward to, I hate to say just move forward right now with Arapahoe County. I think that we do need more information, but I understand we don't have time to wait for more information either. So I appreciate the crux there. The sooner we can get the details on here's what they do, here's what they can do for staff, here's the holes we still have unfilled, that would be helpful. I am not in any way apprehensive about moving forward with Arapahoe County. I just want to make sure we have a full understanding of their services and what we're going to be provided with it.
We would
Thank
have
you.
to do that regardless whether you were, we'd have to get that more information. Councilmember Wink.
Thank you, Mayor. I do think we need something in place at this moment. What I want us to do, though, is not delay in beginning the process to hire a full-time person. So waiting until, I'm not sure how many steps we can take now in advance of even securing a city manager that's a permanent role. But I want us to get moving on that process ASAP and not delay on it just because we're relying on Arapahoe County for now, for the time being.
Great. Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Russell.
I would like to move forward with Arapahoe County, and can we get the information that we need by the council meeting next week?
I would say that that's unlikely. We'd need to have conversations and detail to Arapahoe County what your desires are for that position. Would you agree, Commander?
I can reach out to their lieutenant tomorrow. I'm not sure what his schedule is. I can talk to him and give that information back to you in the form of council request, if that's
Okay.
acceptable.
That would be helpful.
I would like, I think it's going to take more detailed negotiations to see what's involved. That's a very good first step, and we'd make it a top priority.
Right, and
we
I don't
could
want
keep you
to.
apprised of the
Right.
progress.
I don't want to interfere with negotiations or anything. And as far as moving forward, I'm okay with moving forward, but I think that we ought to get Arapahoe County on board, see how that's working, see how the training goes, and then decide whether we want to move forward with the emergency manager or wait. I think also having the new city manager on board will help us with this process. And I know that one of the issues that came up in the discussion over the 3 or 4 months that we worked on this in 2018, even you, Mayor Olson, had asked, about were there other positions that needed to be filled. And so it could be that we need to look at other positions that we might need. So I think we shouldn't, I'm not saying delay this forever, but I'm saying I think we ought to get a few other things in place, and then could we put that on the parking lot perhaps for?
Right, I think we have everyone at least enough to move forward to try out Arapahoe County, and then I think there might be enough of us to say we'd like to see what a position would look like in funding and to get it into the budget so we start that process. I'm going to shut the conversation
I have
down
one
here.
additional question about this. You brought up
30 seconds.
You mentioned, Mr. Englert, about, I forget your position. I don't want to call you police officer Englert, sorry. Commander, there you go, I'm sorry. That in the meeting on April 9th, and it was the meeting on April 9th, Mayor, that you made
April
that
9th
comment.
in
Yeah.
2018.
Yes, 2018, April 9th. Where you mentioned that Kara Bush is actually the power user for COOP. Is she still that designation?
She still works for the city, and she is probably the most adept at that software system that the city has at this point.
Okay. Is there anyone else who's certified besides the fire marshal?
I don't believe the fire marshal has an emergency manager certificate. We
I believe she does, but
Well-
if she doesn't, is there anybody else that you know of?
I have extensive Nims training, but I do not have a certificate as an emergency manager.
Okay.
Thank you. Why don't we do this? Can you find out, interim city manager, what training we have in all of our personnel, just to sort of a sense of how many have gone to some of the Nims training? Just because you're not certified doesn't mean you can't do this, right? So just to get a sense would be nice to know. Thank you. All right, that's the end of this discussion. Thank you so much for being here. Appreciate it.
Mark Wolf gave, the amount of money that he presented in here was actually 18 months old, almost 2 years old by the time he put it in here.
Right.
So I just want to make sure that everybody understands that clarification, because that was already, he did not update that when he put it in here. When I listened to the meeting, he clarified that the information, those funding, was actually already 18 months to 2 years old. So
Right, and we
don't-
did not go to the county and get exactly what they were going to cost in the last. So we'll get all that together, and you'll come back and present it to us. So thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thanks to the team that worked on this. It's kind of a thankless job because you get blamed for everything in the past, even though that's not your job. But I appreciate the kind of work that you've done to try and get us up to speed to where we are. Thank you. I think I'm going to take a quick break because we're an hour in, and we were going to take one at 7 anyway. So let's take a quick break and be back in 5 minutes.
Is that mic working fine or no?
As long as you're like talking.
Doesn't sound, yeah. You got to be like right on it.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Honestly.
Yeah.
I don't know if
It
I
doesn't
know
sound
they
like
were
it's
working
getting
on it
picked up the
today.
entire time.
I know they were working on it today. They might be able to adjust the levels.
Right. Okay, no, that's fine. It's just like, yeah, no, it's okay. I realized now.
Speak right up to it.
And we do have to use my.
You're third.
Okay, let's go back. Sorry.
Not yet. Please wait. Yeah, how you doing?
I'm doing well.
Good, man. Good.
So, I eat this daily. My job, Director of Business Continuity Disaster Recovery for 8
Okay.
hospitals and 200 clinics.
Okay.
17,000 employees. So, one thing I want to say is you guys are on the right track. Because to hire and place, regardless of what's happening. But, I was talking to someone, done something right this minute, to have something in place by the end of this year. It's taken me 4 years to get where I'm at, and that is really getting to a comfort level,
Right.
So, it's,
Yeah, I think obviously we need more information,
All right, Council, our second agenda item is the budget process, and we have Interim City Manager Dorothy Hargrove here to present on community vision discussion tonight. Thank you for leading us through this one.
Pleasure is mine. The really good news is that I do not have a PowerPoint. Never intended to have one, so there's
Can I
nothing.
leave this on just to stay warm? Or
Yes, exactly. Included in the packet, however, was a copy of the council communication in the PowerPoint that was recapping the strategic planning session from council's work of May 2018. So that is in your packet, but will not be presented, only referenced obliquely this evening. I, first of all, will apologize. Ms. Sabata asked me to send her apology. She wasn't able to be here tonight, but she's helped work on this. One of the most important parts of the budget is to determine what our budget priorities are. I personally view the budget as the most important city document that declares to our citizens, where do we think we need to put our resources? What are the priorities? So the strategic goals are very important to helping staff prepare a budget that aligns with council goals and community goals. And I thought it was important to highlight this in a brief presentation. Tonight, we are not going to do a spur-of-the-moment strategic planning session. That is something that requires a good deal of time, a good deal of discussion. But I did think you did a lot of good work last May talking about these strategic goals. And I wanted to affirm that these are still a useful overall guide for how you would like to direct staff to prepare the 2020 budget as we move forward. For the benefit of our visitors and electronic visitors, I would point out that those overall strategic goals were number 1, and I don't think these are in any order. Correct me if I'm wrong. A safe, fun, active, and engaged community. Number 2, strong infrastructure and community parks. 3, a sustainable natural environment. Number 4, historic past and a smart future. Number 5, fiscal sustainability. And number 6, organizational excellence. And council had identified, various sub-priorities under each of those at your session last May. I'm not going to get into all those details unless you'd like to move there, but just wanted to point out that these are broad, but still very useful in guiding our discussions.
Excuse me,
yeah.
City Manager. Mr. Cuesta, do you have, okay, I just want to make sure you weren't ready for something. Thanks.
He's trying to burn out his light. There we go. Okay.
Sorry for the interruption.
No.
I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah. But as I pointed out in the council communication, there are events and circumstances that have occurred since last May that understandably affect budget priorities, especially in capital spending. I reference clearly the flood of July. We have a very active and interested citizens group in the Friends of the Englewood Friends of Englewood Parks, who have requested that we provide information and study funding options, and staff has responded to council requests to provide that type of information. And we have repeated citizen requests for improved alleys, improved street maintenance, and street lighting for safety throughout the city. We are preparing, as staff, a more detailed capital budgeting presentation for April 22nd. And that will include the capital budgets that we think are affordable given the funding formula that seems like makes sense given our estimates of revenue and expense, as well as some spending options that would require alternative financing and what that would look like for our citizens. So the purpose of tonight's discussion is not to go over those details, but just to let you know that they are coming. I would, however, prior to that discussion, and this is sort of the second part of my presentation tonight, is to request direction, consensus from council to issue an RFP for a political consultant polling firm. The purpose of this is to help us provide council with as much information as possible so that we can get the information about budget priorities, capital spending, and operational spending from the people who matter the most, which is the citizens in our community. The professional firm would prepare questions for a scientifically valid survey regarding these overall goals. They would also be tasked with facilitating some community forums. Exactly what those would look like if they were all in person, certainly at different locations around the city. We could even have electronic forums to try and reach as many people as possible. We did, as a city, invest in a community survey in 2018, but I would point out that the purpose of that survey was different. It was more to assess the level of satisfaction that citizens had with the services provided. It did ask a few ancillary questions, but the goal was not to say, what do you think should be our budget priorities? And I would like that to be the direct goal of this political consulting firm, is to gather that information. There would be polling for specific alternative financing options. I will make clear, and I firmly believe, as staff, we are not advocating for those options, but I have an obligation to provide you with the best options, the best information, and I believe that a professional firm would be able to gather that information in a systematic way from our citizens. And what I am asking tonight is for a consensus to move forward on the RFP. In reading my council communication this afternoon again, I thought it wasn't absolutely clear, but let me make it clear tonight that City Council would vote to approve the hiring of any firm. So tonight's decision to move forward is just to issue the RFP and come back to council with options and realistic pricing and the statement of work so that all of that is clear to you. I know that when we engaged a polling firm in discussions of the police building, that was very specific and a little rushed. My hope in this entire budget process is to make sure that council has the information and the time to make good decisions. And so time really is of the essence. I don't want to rush it, but if we get this out in the next couple of months, we could get the proposal, the information back from our citizens and have that data, hard data that you would need to make a decision by the end of June for budgeting purposes. So with that, I would ask for your comments and guidance.
Thank you. Council, questions, comments? Councilmember Berentine?
I think this still rushes it. What's the timeline for giving the budget to your departments and having them work on?
Is the microphone working? It's awfully soft. Yes.
Did you hear the?
Could you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
I think a couple of months, that already puts us into July.
Right. We need the information to make decisions before July, is my point.
And when on the timeline were you going to be putting this to the departments for them to go ahead and do their budget?
Well, we are presenting to City Council on May 11th some of our proposed changes, and we'll provide all that detail at that point. So we're already working on the budgets, but we're not going to make changes or different priorities. We want that to come as soon as possible. Would this have been a better idea in February? You're absolutely right.
Well, I'm actually thinking that between having elected officials, several elections, recall going around talking to everybody, that really we might want to go ahead and set it from the representative body that we have here. I think that you're already working on it. then it's going to kind of put it a little behind the 8 ball if, I mean, I would be very disappointed in this body if we came up with some huge surprise from the, some survey or poll that we're all unaware of. That would seem odd. So considering we're already in the process, and that would be actually very late in the process, once they put their information together and we have a chance to disseminate and put it together, if we really have some kind of big surprise, we've got bigger problems than just the budget.
Well, I will point out that a large part of this is to talk about capital that would only happen with the preferred ballot measure, that if you wanted to put that forward.
So are you saying that you want to go ahead and put something out there so that you can test the voters on whether they want to give us money?
That's part of it, yes.
Yeah, no.
Councilmember Sierra. Oh.
Sorry.
Maybe hit it down a bit. Use it like a gavel.
That's okay. I do believe that we have enough information. I think that there were several things at the strategic planning meetings that we had back in 2018. There were a couple of them that the citizens spoke very clearly, and I do believe that we are representatives and we talk to our constituents. I don't believe we need to spend that kind of money to hire somebody to tell us what the citizens want. We've been chosen to represent the citizens, and so, I mean, I think there are some pretty big things. The storm sewer system, the improvement of alleys and street maintenance, and I think code enforcement was one of the huge issues back then. I think that we have, I think probably discussing among us, because that $75,000 to $100,000 could go a long ways in supporting some of the programs that we need to do. So I am not in favor of hiring somebody to do this.
Councilmember Sierra? Yes.
So we're talking about we're really talking about just like the $3.5 million that we have within the capital projects that we do annually, somewhere around that sum, correct? Is that basically what we're discussing here?
Yeah, I don't want to put whatever is appropriate.
Right.
Yeah, somewhere in that neighborhood.
Right. So last year, I think what we used that money for was towards the roof. I think there was improvement on the rec center. Maybe even Pirates Cove was part of it as well.
Those are the big ticket items. There's a lot of ongoing, well, not ongoing projects, but a lot of IT infrastructure, a lot of street maintenance, the road and bridge, all comes out of the capital budget every
But those
year.
are all basically reoccurring maintenance in a sense.
But they
not
still,
really
yeah.
necessary maintenance, but it's just it's almost a fixed fee that we're seeing year after year after year. The roads and streets is always about 1.6 million. And
It has been in the
IT
past,
is
whether that
about
makes sense.
something along those lines, but it doesn't really it's not much variance there in terms of those spend.
There hasn't been, no.
Right. And so I think what we're really discussing is just what we're doing with last year was $3.5 million. I'm not sure what it was in previous years, but that's really what we're discussing at this point. To me, that's what it sounds like.
That's the capital that we have available.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Martinez.
Thank you. To put anything on the ballot, the deadline is July 1st. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. So I think that's part one of it. But we also, to Councilmember Sierra's point, our capital needs last time it was like $50 million or something, right? So $3 million is not even going to barely scratch what we need. So I think that was probably part of another thing is, are we going to ask the community to, one, I guess, gauge their priorities on how important are these capital needs? And if they are that important, then we would decide next steps, whether we reshift our budget just internally or we ask the voters for alternative funding. Is that the understanding?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Other council members before I go back to Councilmember Berentine? Councilmember Cuesta.
You bet. Can you run me through the timeline again? I'm looking through the presentation that Director Sabata gave us a couple weeks ago, And August 5th is when it's at least scheduled that the budget will be proposed to council. So that isn't that far after July. Councilmember Martinez brings up that we would have any ballot measures finalized by July 1. That seems like a really short runway to get a bid on polling, decide on who it is, vote on it, and then actually have them conduct whatever research they're going to do. Regardless of whether I'm supportive or not, you think that's feasible within the next, we're looking at 3 months now to July, 2.5?
I think it is feasible, yes. Firms react very quickly. I mean, that's kind of their job.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, Councilmember Barentine.
We don't even have the Calibre report back yet. We keep spending money for surveys or citizen surveys, and we're not listening to what they bring back. So I don't think we have time. We still need to take, what is it, 70,000, 170,000 that we spent, and go ahead and make sure that we get that information back, which was supposed to be part of the capital improvements. We have numbers floating out there from 80 to 150 million, and then that's not really the whole thing, or it is the whole thing, and we're confusing the community with this when we've actually spent money, good money, to have it assessed and bring back accurate information so that what we do is consistent. So I think we've gotten enough. I don't want to get survey and consultant happy and not ever have the time to assess the work they're doing and the information they're providing, and I don't think that that's been happening. When is Calibre coming? Because
At the end of May.
End of May.
I don't have an exact date, but that's a promise.
And to Councilmember Cuesta's point, I think we have a very short time frame here to actually vet the information and then have it be valuable for how we're going to prioritize. And if all this is a marketing issue, to go ahead and see whether the public has some will to go ahead and dip more into their pocketbook, even though we don't know and they're not going to know where we're going to prioritize that, then I would be against that at this time, because we haven't prioritized it. And that needs to come from this representative body, where we believe some of those necessities are. And we haven't even gotten the information from the people we've paid in order to start to have part of that conversation. So I just think we're too far behind on that one, and we need to do the best we can with all of the plethora of information we have already collected. We know where, I think we can have some pretty good discussions on where we need to start spending some money.
Thank you. So we have two that are saying no against doing a polling. So far, I didn't quite hear from maybe one sort of a yes. I am totally in favor of us doing a polling. I think it's the only responsible way. There's no way the seven of us can have a really clear view of what people are willing to do at this point. People are not always willing to tell us exactly whether they're willing to put more money for things publicly, and anonymously is a lot better. I think it's just, it's not my asking about their money and what they want to do. So I'm strongly in favor of doing that. And if you think we can get the timeline to get it, it would be irresponsible in my mind to put anything on the ballot without that, without some sense. I know Arapahoe County has done a little bit of that recently and backtracked on one of the things that they were thinking of, because there just wasn't quite the appetite. So I would like to see us do that. It doesn't mean we're going to do it. It means we've got the data that we need, and it's done well. It's done with a professional who knows what they're doing. Is nobody skewed in some political way, one way or the other. This is what they do. And it was incredibly helpful for the police, and it was really very accurate. When we made that decision, it was overwhelmingly yes. I think it's pretty clear that we can pick what our topic areas are, so we don't have to even prioritize. We know what the topic areas probably are, the ones that we can't just fund out of $3 million a year. We're not going to get all the stormwater mitigation done in a different way other than having funds come from another place. We're not going to have roads or alleys paved or anything like that without more money coming in a different way. So we can do pieces and bits, but I would rather be making a decision with all the data, and we can decide no. It's up to us. So to me, it's well spent money to be prepared and to not repeat the history of just kicking the can down the road, which I think we have for a number of things for years. It's been, so I think it's time. But, Councilmember Cuesta.
Thank you, Mayor. And as we continue to talk about this, it seems to be changing a bit what the end goal of this is. It sounded like, what are the citizens' priorities for budget, which to me is one very specific thing. But now it seems to be, well, we're poll testing. What are they willing to go to a bond with? What are they willing to go to a pay or a tax increase with? And that to me is a bit of a different conversation. Is that what we're looking at here?
My hope was to do both, because we have, operating, if they say, we don't want to put any money into alleys, that's useful information, for instance.
Okay.
It's not one or the other.
Oh, very good. Thank you. And secondarily, I would credit to Director Sabata for really getting the budget process kicked off early. And, I think that she got a good jump on it. And I don't want us to sit here waiting for poll results to come back, to figure out how we're going to make a decision, and that we're not moving forward in the meantime. And so I hope that if this body was to move forward with it, that we're not twiddling our thumbs until we get poll results back. And then I would further say, how are we going to use these? So whatever comes back number one, that's what we're pursuing. I'm unclear on, if we were to move forward with this, what do we do with those results? What happens after we get this back? Thank you.
Councilmember Martinez.
That's okay. I'm thinking that it would be twofold as well. We would get the community's feedback on budget priorities, whether we ask them for additional funding or not. I think the additional data on the prioritization will help us in our own prioritization. Then if we decide that we want to put something on the ballot, then we can, but we don't have to. So I think it'll be twofold. I'm comfortable going forward with it.
I think Mayor Pro Tem or Councilmember Wink, and then Mayor Pro Tem.
I would like to echo everything you said, Mayor Olson. I'm absolutely in favor of moving forward with this.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem.
One of the issues that I have in moving forward with the polling, and just the way that was worded, perhaps people don't want to pay for alleys. That doesn't mean the alleys don't need to be taken care of.
True.
And so one thing that I'm having a struggle with, because I've really been saying this for 3 years, we need to decide what our priorities are. Maybe there are areas that we need to cut back. And I'm going to tell you, whether the citizens know it or not, there already is a huge tax burden on them. And we cannot continue raising taxes just because we think they're willing to pay for it. Personally, if we as a council are not willing to look at the tough areas of where we're willing to be cutting back, I'm not willing to approve giving us more money, because we as a council generally tend to not make wise decisions. And I know there are a lot of things we need. I mean, I understand the parks need to be updated. There are some things that could be done to parks by getting citizen help. I mean, there are just a lot of things, but the very first thing we always do, let's go back to the citizens and get more money. That is not always the wisest thing to do. That is the only reason that I am against polling, because I believe that we have enough things to make decisions on. We were told a couple weeks ago, maybe a month ago, that we have $9.5 million over and above. And normally, and I don't know that this is true, we were told in the budget process that generally there is $6 million to put towards capital projects. It didn't happen last year. I think we were short last year. But $6 million and 9.6, that's $15.6 million. That's not chump change. I think we can start making progress, but we have to have accurate information. So I am not in favor of polling. Thank you.
I'm not sure. Councilmember Cuesta again? Yeah. No, okay, thank you. Councilmember Wink then.
Oh,
I think, yeah, that's what I thought. Councilmember Berentine.
I'm really not interested in taking a couple of meetings to sit here and discuss what questions, how to word it, how we're going to do the polling, and waste more time. We've spend an inordinate amount of time on this council talking about really worthless things, whether it's the code enforcement board or on and on about the policy and decorum and all of and we're not doing the business that we're supposed to be doing. And I am really not interested in wasting a meeting, spending time talking about how we should word the poll question so we can see how we can garner some more money out of the citizens. Also, I do want some consistent information. We keep hearing 9 million when it's convenient, 6 million when in other situations, 3 million. It's my understanding that there was a surplus last year and that was put to capital projects that put that up to $9 million. I mean, I know we keep eking away at some of that money for other things because we keep appropriating things that weren't even in the budget, but we need to have the information be consistent so that the public doesn't get confused when we keep throwing around differences of $3 million is a lot, and we need to make sure that we're consistent about that. And I really would appreciate that we focus as a council on the real business of what the city needs. And we are getting distracted with all of these side issues that are really minutia and details. And I mean, just for the mayor to say it's irresponsible not to spend more money on yet another survey, I wholly disagree with. What it's irresponsible for is that we're not taking care of the business of the city. This building, these employees aren't safe. And everybody knew that when I said that, and there should be a hue and cry to make sure that there is somebody to make sure that at least this building for our employees has an emergency manager and that we have a plan in place. If we care, then let's put our money where our mouth is and stop wasting all of this time on all of these frivolous things and actually take care of the real serious business that we're supposed to be doing.
Thank you. Councilmember Sierra.
So the only thing that I mentioned was the 3.1 million that we transferred from the general fund balance to the capital improvement fund. So that was the only thing I was talking about in terms of 3.1 million. Wasn't talking about the general fund balance as a whole. I don't have those numbers in front of me, but those have been discussed by the Director Sabat in the past. And then in terms of infrastructure, parks go into infrastructure. It's a need that we're going to have to, at some point, put dollars towards it in order for it not to break or to get into a state where something's going to have to happen immediately. So there's a lot of different numbers that we throw out there. $50 million worth of the parks to do the entire park structure. So that's 50 million of the entire infrastructure needs of the city. If you're looking at a specific times, I think if it's over $100 million if you look like 30 years out within what the needs are for the city. It doesn't mean that we need to improve it today, but maybe by year 15 or by year 20, there's going to have to be dollars set aside for that. So that's the reason why we're seeing or hearing so many different numbers is because it just depends on the time frame that we're talking about. So I think in terms of what we're talking about tonight, I wish the timing was a little bit earlier, truthfully. I'm not sure if there's really, I'm on the fence about this one. This one's tough to me. I think this would make more sense for me if we decided to bring it forward for 2020. I think just moving forward for 2019, I don't think that there is I don't see the need of it for this year. But I'm right there on the fence in terms of just trying to understand what it is that we're really getting out of this. In terms of the budget discussion, I don't see the need there for 2020, just because of the timing. But then in terms of polling, to me it also seems like a timing issue there. But I think it would help us set or help us prioritize in future years in terms of how to use the dollars. So I think right now I'm a no, but if anybody wants to help convince me, I'm all ears there.
City Manager Hargrove, is it not true that we would have to wait till 2021 to do it again? We can't put it on we can only put it on the ballot this year, and then we have to wait another 2 years.
The actual position or the consultant is what I meant.
Right, but we won't be able to put anything on the ballot until another 2 years later.
Actually, no, we can put something
can
in the
during
2020.
2021?
Yes.
Oh, 2020.
In 2020, yes.
I thought we couldn't on
I
the
thought we
off.
couldn't either, but
That's what we've been told many
yes,
times.
Yes, exactly. But talking, yeah, but we could refer a measure or citizens could petition in 2020.
Okay.
is my latest understanding of that. But thank you for that
Okay,
clarifying
so this
question.
would mean that nothing comes forward about parks or anything. We'd have no RFP for any of that if we don't have consensus.
No, exactly.
Would you do polling for parks, or would you do parks regardless?
That is entirely up to City Council, but I would point out that the Citizens Group has indicated that they will do all in their power to get it on the ballot this year by petition if it's not a referred measure by Council.
Councilmember Martinez? Oh, I'm sorry, Mayor Pro Tem.
I was just going to say that they can put it on the ballot even if we don't refer it. I would like to say that staff has done an amazing job in moving forward with getting grants this year and doing work at Romans Park, and I feel like we are making progress there with the parks. If they want to go ahead, and this is a discussion that we need to have, do we want to move that forward? We don't have to have the polling information. We could move it forward on the ballot. Without it, we could decide that we don't want to, and they could go out and get signatures. So I think that we need to have this discussion also.
I think we are having the discussion, but so you would be willing to put it on the ballot without polling is what you're saying, regardless, doesn't matter.
Well, I'm not necessarily willing to put it on the ballot because, and I know this is really not the discussion that we were having right now, but it's kind of lending
both.
itself to this.
Right.
Right now, I believe we have things that are more important than the parks. I'm not saying that the parks are not important, but I do believe the storm sewer system is. So if the citizens decide to get petitions and get it on the ballot, it'll be on the ballot. And if they pass it, then we will provide for that.
I'm going to just weigh in again. I think stormwater and infrastructure, whether it's alleys or something like that, are probably our biggest needs, and it's what people are screaming the most about. And then second is parks and some of the things there. And I don't want to move forward with that. I don't feel at ease with putting it on ballot without a little bit more data. And I think we should be putting it on sooner than later. I just think the economy is at a point where I think we can do it. But anyway, Councilmember Martinez, and then Sierra.
I was going to just say a couple things that were just mentioned, but I think capital needs are our most important thing and our largest dollar item that's going to serve us the longest. So I think that's probably our biggest kind of bite of the apple that we need to tackle. But whether or not we go forward with this polling and collecting more data, the citizens can put whatever they want to on the ballot, and council could too if we don't do this polling information, and then we could just randomly, throw a dart and put something on the ballot and see if it sticks. So there's those options too. But regardless of what we do, the citizens can put something just for the parks or for anything on the ballot if they want. So that's up to them as well if we choose not to take that route.
I think you might be next.
Okay, you bet. I unequivocally agree that infrastructure, be it drainage, alleys, whatever we need to do to get that resolved, and for citizens to really feel confident in that drainage, it has got to be our highest priority. I would certainly not put a parks bond above that without question. Now, that doesn't mean that citizens won't bring it. Maybe that's the case. My biggest concern is that the citizens have been extremely generous in funding things that are necessities. The police headquarters, the schools, tremendous investments, great investments in the community. My concern is the citizens getting just a bond fatigue, that these are coming over and over and over again, and there's always something else. And that I'm a little bit concerned about parks getting in front of drainage, and then, parks pass, and then drainage, they just shelled out on parks. They're not ready to shell out on drainage. And so for me, it's drainage and infrastructure first. And if we can squeeze parks in, I would love to. I was at Bellevue Park twice over the weekend. I love the Inglewood Parks myself. But for me, it is infrastructure, drainage, first and foremost by a long shot. Thank you.
Councilmember Sierra.
So again, we're talking about two different fronts here. So the storm drainage is going to be coming out of the storm drainage fund. So we've already did an fee increase this year. Potentially, once we get the Calibre results back, there's probably going to be another fee increase. We're talking about the general fund here, at least specifically Well, actually, we're not. But I think in terms, so I guess, again, back to the question about the polling. Any idea about the type of questions we would be asking in terms of the polling? Are we asking, obviously the parks are about $50 million total need, but are we asking, would you be willing to do 10 million? Would you be willing to 20 million? Or what type of questions are we going to try to get, or what type of data points are we trying to get out of this survey?
The surveys that I've seen and samples from other cities would indicate the latter. If you're supportive of our parks, would you be willing to support a bond issue for X, Y, and Z? Would you be willing to support a sales tax increase for additional maintenance, that sort of thing? So, it's not an either-or type of thing. It would be detailed information on each of those areas.
Yeah, I think that's...
Does that help?
Yeah, it does help.
Okay.
Councilmember Barentine.
Councilmember Quest, I hope that answered your question. It's about finding out whether people want to put something on the ballot. I mean, I think that if we have the need that this council can decide to do that without the additional expense of this polling. I would agree with Councilmember Martinez that I suppose I don't think it's exactly throwing a dart. I mean, we're all have meetings and talk, well, most of us have meetings and we talk to our constituents and we find out what they want. Like you found out that there was a need for the parks. But if it comes back from Calibre that we need $150 million to make it safe, and we're willing to go ahead and put $50 million into the parks, and they can enjoy it as a pool if it floods, it just doesn't seem like we've got our priorities straight. And sometimes we have to be the body that makes the priorities. If they can come back and say that it's going to be between $80 to $150 million for us to make our citizens safe, for us not to lose a bunch of homes, already some of them probably shouldn't have been rebuilt, then we're going to have to decide where our priorities lie as a council first. If that's the case and the citizens want to come forward with a parks bond anyway, and as you are concerned that they might have bond fatigue that they choose, then at least that's something that they did, and we'll try to do the best job we can to make sure that they're informed and understand what the priorities are. But we don't have all the information yet, and this is about just trying to poll to see whether there's a feel for getting more money out of the people. And I think that's our job, and we need to prioritize that first, and we don't have enough time. And I don't want to waste any more money on doing those kind of things that don't produce anything except information that we should already be bringing to the table.
Thank you. I'm going to just speak one more time about this. So here's what could happen. We could decide we're not going to put anything on the ballot. Citizens could come forward and put the parks on, because that's the only thing, and parks could go through. And then what's lost is we have not been able to say, actually, if given a chance, citizens would have voted for infrastructure needs instead of that. They would have and I think that's what they would do. But I would like to have a little bit more data from the back, in back of that to be able to do that. I would prefer to have that. I don't think it's wasted money at all. It was extremely helpful when we did the police building. It's been helpful every time we've used that kind of format here. I do not find any of this conversation to be trivial. I find that offensive. Every conversation we have here is important. Even as we work, that's fine, but we disagree, Councilmember Barentine. This is the work, is figuring out how we're going to pay for major, major infrastructure issues. And I have been on for 10 years and we have kicked it down the road. And we can give $3 million or $6 million or $9 million every year. We should be. We even voted no to some of that last year. We need to be using that extra money. It's both and for me. So I would like to see us get the data, and if we don't, I'm going to be pushing that we still put something on the ballot for infrastructure kinds of things, because parks, while I think it is incredibly important, is not my first priority. It's second, maybe third, depending on how we decide we have to go out after money. But it's important, but I think we've heard enough. I mean, ask the citizens for, and their priorities. Maybe they say, no, really, you guys have made too much a big deal about the infrastructure. Maybe we've got a small group coming out all the time. Who knows what they're going to say? So I'd like to hear their prioritization of this as well. I think we all have our own little sound chambers we work in, and I cannot say that I know what all the citizens in the Englewood area really want on this, and I would prefer to spend the money correctly that way. And if we need to say, hey, this isn't going to go, then let's not do it. Let's not do a bond fatigue. Let's wait another year, whatever it is. So, Councilmember Cuesta, I'm done. I'm done. I won't say any more.
Mine is a question for you, Mayor. I'm not sure if I'm following. So the citizens could go forward with the parks bond regardless, and thus far they've kind of indicated they will. That, you know, if council doesn't do it, they will move to get a citizens initiative
They sure could,
on
yes.
the ballot. So that could move forward regardless. We don't have control of that.
Right, but if we have information telling them that actually the citizens would prefer to have something else over that, we could actually be much more informed in telling people and saying, hold off. You're going to find out people might vote no on that even. Why waste time on it and then not get what we need, which is some other higher level. It's like putting plumbing in your house. Nobody wants to, you can't show it off, you know.
I follow the logic. I'm not sure if us saying we've got a poll that says infrastructure is more important is going to make the Friends of Englewood Parks slow down their petition. Truth be told, I don't think it will.
Well, I'm not going to guess that one way or the other. I just don't, I'm not, you know, maybe they will still. I heard them say they would prefer us to figure it out, and then they will go out and market it. But, yeah. What is the cost, again, of what you think this would be for prioritization and polling kind of thing?
I estimated somewhere between 75 and 100,000.
Yeah.
And that's on the high side, but I would not want to say it was less than that and surprise you later.
Could I ask where the details are?
I don't, that's an estimate. I don't
It's under
have,
financial
that's why I
implications.
wanted to do an RFP that's just based on.
No, I know where the 75 to 100 is, but it doesn't say how many people it would reach, what kind of, I mean,
That's what
we
the,
spend a lot of money for the citizen survey, and we only get 300 people, and it's not really a very good example to make decisions on, so I need to.
no, as I said, it would also involve community outreach, meetings and forums. It would be a outreach effort. And that would be included in the RFP that you would vote
July.
between now and June. Yes.
Okay, and because the only information, in all fairness, is that we have a price, 75 to 100,000. No other information or how much we're going to do.
And again, you're absolutely right,
Thanks for
Councilmember Barentine. But the ask is to come back with an RFP so that you would have those specifics so that you could make the final decision.
Councilmember Cuesta, you relied on.
Yes, you bet. And to the group, this is a really valuable conversation, and this money's going to have to come from somewhere. And I think that everybody knows what, you know, those issues we hear about commonly. Parks are certainly on it, infrastructure, drainage, the alleys are have really become an issue lately too. And what if we get this pulled back? It seems like there's several folks up here saying that drainage, infrastructure, alleys, you know, combine those three, all rise to the top of their list. What if it comes back, this poll that says, no, that isn't, that it's some obscure thing that we haven't heard of? Does that mean that's what we're going to create a bond for? I'm not sure if I would just follow suit just because this poll said that this comes back with whatever information from whatever sample size. I tend to agree. And maybe it's an echo chamber that you're describing. I think we're hearing folks saying that there's a lot of push towards infrastructure. I think that is a real demand. I think the parks is a real demand too, truth be told. So I'm not sure what new information I'm going to glean from this poll, and I'm not sure that's going to make me change my mind necessarily either. And I need to be more pliable in my own thoughts too. But I would be curious to see if something just out of left field came back, that all of a sudden we're going to change course as city council and we're all going to go focus on this new shiny object that comes back in the poll too. And that's, to me, what do we do with the results of this? More of a hypothetical question. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you.
So my comments to that would be that we don't know exactly, and that's why we need to do this. And I think if we have, one of the things that prioritization and polling does is start to sort of cultivate the soil for something to come, and you get an appetite for it, and it's built on real data, not just what we perceive from any town halls or forums that we have with the same people over and over. So that's what's useful to me. I do think that, you know, I'm going to stop the conversation because I think, but what I want to hear from us is, I guess one question is, do you want to move forward on something with an RFP? And if you don't, are you still open to us just putting something on the ballot if we decide, given the budgeting, because if that's not, I think the public ought to know, because then they know that we don't have an appetite if the data shows that even in our own world, so that they can choose to put something on the ballot. I know people who want to put some infrastructure stuff on the ballot as well, not just parks, and maybe that's the way it needs to come. So I guess so I'm going to do a round robin. I assume it's Councilmember Barentine, you want to start and just what do you want to do? No RFP, no polling.
I think to spend another $100,000 on some more consultants and polling is not useful at this time. For all that we've spent, we could have put some pipes in the ground already.
Thank you.
Or playground equipment. So no, I'm not for this. On your second point of that, I don't think anything ever stops any of the council from ever proposing to put something on the ballot at any time. So if any council member believes that they need polling to do that, then that's their personal preference, but it's not a requirement.
Right, so for you, you wouldn't feel like it was a requirement for you to have polling. Great, thank you. Councilmember Sierra. What I don't want to have happen is in 2 months you saying, oh, I wish we had done polling so we could know. You're saying
I'm
no,
not gonna,
you would feel
I'm
like
not
you
gonna
know.
say that.
Okay, good.
I thought it was pretty clear.
Councilmember Sierra.
I'm going to say no on the polling, and I'm also going to, but I do believe that we still need to have some type of ballot initiative on just improving the infrastructure.
Okay, Councilmember Martinez.
I would say yes on the polling to inform all of our decisions through this budgeting process.
Councilmember Cuesta.
I'm going to pass on the polling. I'm not sure how effective it can be, and I'm skeptical of the timeline as well. I would echo that I believe the conversation certainly needs to continue on getting some sort of exploring what we could do with a bond for infrastructure. Now, timeline comes into place again because it's May on the Calibre report, if I understood correctly.
End of May, yes.
End of May, and so we're looking at a July 1st deadline, and so it's hard for us to even know what the full demand is going to be out of that too. So we certainly have our work cut out for us, but I would pass on the polling at this time. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Wink.
Thanks, Mayor. I prefer to make decisions based on data that's collected and understood. So I would be in favor of hearing from the population in a wide amount of our constituents. So I'm for the polling. Thank you.
And Mayor Pro Tem.
No on the polling.
Okay, great. I think we're doing anything in-house. I hope that you'll have the resources to do that, to help us be informed, but
We don't.
I know that's why you were asking for it.
But thank you. Thank you for the discussion.
Councilmember Cuesta, your light's on. Councilmember Martinez?
So my next question is, I know staff needs kind of prioritization from council if we're not going to get it from the citizens. So I guess what would be our next step in that? Are we just probably assuming that the priorities that we outlined last year, we're still going to stick to those? Is that kind of what we're going to go for, or are we going to have other discussions?
I think that's up to council. I mean, entirely. If you want to have a more detailed discussion about the overall strategic goals that you outlined, I'd welcome that. I'm not quite sure how that would look, but we could go. Otherwise, unless otherwise directed, staff will continue to prepare their budgets based on these strategic priorities that you had discussed.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. So did you get enough for tonight? I guess we didn't on the vision part, but we'll
No.
go
I
forward
mean,
unless we...
It affirms and clarifies the vision so we know how to move forward on that.
One of the nice things about these 5 or 6 things that we did is they're not incommensurate, they're not opposites. They can actually be done at the same time because I'm sorry, I'm on the human resources thing now. So I was thinking the other day that we can be safe, fun, active, and engaged community and still have fiscal sustainability be a part of that one. So we don't do parks just to do parks. It's got to be fiscally sustainable, and we try to do other things. So it's not that they're not as hierarchical as they might be if we'd come up with something else. So thank you. All right, next up is City Manager selection process. Human Resources Director Maria Gonzalez is here to help us come up with a timeline and recruiting.
So
Before we go into the matter, I want to introduce Tanya Carboni. She's our new HR manager, so I wanted to take a couple of minutes so she can introduce herself and tell you who she is.
Great, thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. I am Tanya Carboni. I'm actually a Colorado resident, but I've spent the past 26 years in the Air Force. I just recently retired and am now part of the HR team. Very excited to be part of your team, very excited to be here.
Great, welcome.
First council. Right here, right here, right here. He's ready. He was born ready.
It's all warmed up.
Okay, so I'm working with Heidi to come up with some dates, and I know many people will think that it's too much in advance. We already have some conflicting scheduling issues, so I would like to get council to commit, if we can, to some dates for the interviewing process so we can plan around it. We also need to make some decisions on timing issues and the involvement of public and how do we want to do the meetings. So that's what I'm asking council to make some decisions around tonight. So if we follow the slides that you have on your package, okay, the first date that we have to discuss is Wednesday or Thursday, May 22nd or 23rd. That's a minimum of 2 hours, and that's the day that Heidi will come and make the presentation on the most qualified candidates that she gets from the posting. And then we're going to select 6 candidates for initial in-person interviews, for the first round of interviews. So I would like you to look at your calendars and tell me what that day is, so we can, and what time, obviously, time and date and time. So I can coordinate with Heidi and we can start making the plans for that.
Do you want to do one slide at a time?
Yes,
okay,
I think that would be easier.
May 23rd or 22nd, 22nd or 23rd. Councilmember Martinez.
May 23rd does not work for me. Englewood Creates has an event that night. I think Mayor Olson, are you speaking at that event?
Yeah, but it's only 5 to 7, so we probably could go a bit at the beginning and then head over. So I thought it was a yes for me.
Okay. I was planning on being there the whole time if possible. So for me, that's out, but the 22nd does work.
Okay. Councilmember Cuesta?
I'm just trying to check the 22nd.
Okay.
The Historical Society. I'm looking now. Could you
Well, you know what? I would say that these overcome any board and commission just because we got to do this. So it's an absent night then. Okay. Councilmember Wink?
Both work for me.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem?
Both work. I prefer Wednesday, but.
Okay. Both work for me. Councilmember Barentine? Okay, 22nd. Councilmember Sierra?
Both work for me.
Okay, then let's go with the 22nd.
Okay, what time do you would like to have those 2 hours?
6 o'clock always works for us.
Okay.
So you're okay? 6 to 8, 6 to 8:30? One down.
One down.
22nd of May.
Okay, so
On to June.
let's move to June. So I have at least one member of council has issues with the following set of dates. So I worked with Heidi this morning to get some alternatives. So I have there June 3rd and 4th, and that's not going to work because there is at least one member that's going to miss the whole process if we do these dates. So as I said, I didn't want to change the presentation. I'm sorry, but we need to work on alternative dates. So we could do, instead of the 3rd and the 4th, for the first round of interviews, I was looking at May 28th and 29th. May.
Oh, go back?
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
move it closer to us instead of going all the way to June. So it would be 28th and 29th, and that is 3 hours each day for interviews. We're going to have 6 candidates, and so we need 6 hours total, 1 hour per candidate. And again, these dates are important because we need to plan around your time to have staff interviews and public engagement, and we're going to talk about that next. Once we decide on if the dates are good, we're going to plan a lot of things around the council time.
I cannot do the 29th. I could do the 28th and the 30th. Councilmember Martinez?
I can do May 28th or May 29th. I can also not do that first week of June. So whoever else is out, that I'm also out.
Okay, so.
Councilmember Sierra?
So I can do both days, but I'm just looking at the calendar. That's immediately after Memorial Day, so.
But we need 2 days, so
Yes,
it's
we
not
need-
just an either
Well,
or.
I could do that entire week.
So-
Okay, so we need 2 days, and then I need an hour of council because you need to decide. The following week, the finalists will come. So we need to decide and notify the candidates which 3 are coming for finals. And that's when we do the public engagement. So we can do 20, I have, if you look.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
If we're moving this piece to the week, last week of May, then the next week you're saying the finalists are coming, but you just got done saying that somebody would be able to do the process.
That's what I said. Let's go one engagement at a time. So on the last week of May, we need 2 days. We need 7 hours. Okay, we can break them out in 3 days. We can break them out in 1 day if you're willing to spend it. I mean, I think it's too much. I will not recommend that. But we can break it down in 2 days. 3 and 3 hours of interviewing, and then the second day we can do an hour after and make a decision on what are the top 3, if the council is willing to do that. So if you look at the next one, I had there fifth or sixth, 2 hours, okay, on either day. We can make it probably in 1 hour to have the discussion and pick the top 3.
So you're moving Monday and Tuesday
so we can
Tuesday and Wednesday into the week before, and it's either or?
So we need
or there, but you have and on this one.
Yeah, instead of looking at June, we're looking at the last week of May. Now, as they pointed out, is that Monday is Memorial Day, so we cannot meet on that Monday.
Right.
So we only have available Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, and we need to slot at least 7 hours, 3 and 3 for interviewing, and 1 hour for council discussion of the top 3.
In the past, when we've done this before, we have used council meeting nights, so we just wouldn't have well, it's a regular meeting that night, isn't it? It's a regular, not a study session that night.
No,
So-
it's a study session. It's a study session. It's
Is it? Okay, so the 28th could be the 29th and the 30th. I cannot do the 29th for sure. I am giving finals that night and have to be there. So it has to be,
Suggesting maybe the 28th and the 30th?
yes, yes.
Yeah, we can do 3 hours on the 28th and 4 hours on the 30th, and make the decision that night after we finish the interview. And so everybody will be at the interviewing.
So let's,
About the community meeting, is there something?
I can't see that there is.
Are we? Might have just been a mistake. Thank you for clarifying that. I can do it the 28th and 30th.
okay. Anybody not do the 28th and 30th?
No. Are we going to preempt the study session
Yeah.
then?
Yeah.
Okay.
This is more important.
Right. Okay. Great. 28th and 30th will work for me.
Anybody that it won't work for? Okay, so put the 28th and 30th down.
Okay.
Good job. We're like 6 to 9 again. Good, we're making progress.
She said she needed 7 hours.
Oh,
Well,
Yes,
that was my question too. Do we think an hour is going to be enough time to decide?
We're only picking the top 3 that are coming to the second interviewing.
Sure.
So it should be fairly clear what are the top 3 because we're going to rate them. So you will have them, like you can rate the 3 on the 28th and have them bring them ready on the 30th. It shouldn't take that long for you to decide which one are the top 3 that you want to combine.
I'm totally in for 1 hour. I just, sometimes our decisions take a little longer than
it
we
will
plan,
take more
so.
than an hour.
It will?
I don't know.
Well, it
Pretty
depends.
obvious.
It could be really obvious, you're right.
I'd recommend that you start earlier so that you're not.
5:30 might be a better start.
Okay. On the 30th. 5:30 on the, okay.
5:30 on both?
Is that okay for the interviewees to come earlier?
Yeah, we'll schedule them. Yeah, we'll schedule them according to your availability. They need to know that they need to be available, and that's what also we're doing it close enough. So when Heidi does her vetting, she will tell them what days they need to be available, and it may be any time for them.
So it's 6 to 9 and then 5:30 to 9.
30.
Well, Should we do
5:30 to-
5:30 both days and then just be done early if we're,
That's fine.
then nobody will forget?
Okay.
That's fine. Actually, that's not a bad suggestion.
Get out early,
5:30 to
maybe.
9:30 on each one.
On each one, and then we've got enough time, and if we don't need it, we won't have to.
Okay.
At least we've blocked it off.
Okay.
Okay, great. Next.
Then, the next one, talk about June 10th. So I moved that to June 3rd. Okay.
What happened to June
But
5th and
he's-
6th?
That's what we're doing in May 28th and 30th instead.
Yeah, she's got 2 slides in there. That's why it's confusing.
Yeah, move 2 slides. Sorry. So we have that one, that's for the interviewing, and then we have this suggestion for the discussion. So we comprise those 3 days into 2.
Okay,
Okay?
all right.
And then the next one is the 3 hours for final round interviews. So you have selected the 3 on the last week of May, and we are going to invite them again, the top 3, for interview with council, and that's when we're going to do the public engagement and the staff meeting, just with the top 3, not with all the 6 candidates.
So now I'm kind of cheating off to him. And what happened to the 3rd and 4th? What happened to June?
She compressed them into the May ones, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
We were going to pick 2 hours
Oh.
there, so we're putting them.
Don't worry about them.
5th and 6th of June don't matter.
Don't matter
We're on
anymore.
to the 10th.
Yes.
We're on to the 10th is a regular meeting though, isn't it? Maybe not. No, it's a study session. Okay. So we're going to need more than 3 hours. That's for sure if you're bringing in 3 candidates.
Well, that's what Heidi proposed, 3 hours. She said that 1 hour per candidate was plenty.
Right, but we got to have time to breathe.
Like 10 minutes
So-
between each one for a break.
Okay, so we can do 4 hours.
I think we start at 5:30 again if everybody.
Okay. But is everybody okay with June 3rd?
June 3rd?
For what?
No. We're changing that to June 3rd because it doesn't work for neither of the 2 council members. So June 10th, we're moving to June 3rd.
Does that work for me?
We're moving 1
Okay,
week
but that
ahead.
is a regular meeting that night. We're stuck with the 10th, I think.
Can-
You can't do the 10th. Shoot.
I'm out the first week of June, so 3,
Oh, that's
4,
right.
5,
You
6,
already
7
said
don't
that.
work for me. But don't hold up on my account.
I think we want everybody here. So
I'm not available again until the 17th.
you're out the week of the 10th?
Then why don't you do it the week of the 3rd, and I will sit out or submit my thoughts prior to that discussion.
But the 3rd's a council meeting night.
I'm still not going to.
Does it have to be Monday? Could it
No,
be?
but we wouldn't have that. We wouldn't be able to have the discussion on the 3rd.
Oh, right.
And,
I thought she said the 10th.
yeah, I'm moving the discussion to when you come back. So basically, the idea is to move June the 3rd, so we do interviews on the 3rd, and then you will have another night to discuss. Council to discuss the top 3 candidates at length. And I'm leaving that one on the 17th.
But we
Right.
could,
You're going to be here for the 3rd, but you wouldn't be here the rest of the week.
Correct.
So you wouldn't be here for the discussion of what you just interviewed.
But hold on, because we can leave the discussion on the 17th.
Okay, I'm going to ask our city manager to tell us what dates are regular and what are study sessions so we're not getting messed up here.
well, I would say that city council can decide to change the dates of the regular meetings. I think charter says that you need 2 meetings a month, but with advance notice and posting, you can change that. So if it's a regular meeting, that doesn't need to preclude something else.
But if we left it the way it is right now, June 3rd is
a regular meeting.
meeting, and June 10th is a study session.
Correct.
And then the 17th is obviously a regular meeting. So if we were going to stay with that, at least we know, but otherwise we have to flip them.
Yeah, we could flip it so you can be at the interviewing, and then my proposal is we'll do the discussion on the 17th. So you have time to see the videos if we take videos, or that's something that we need to decide that's next. And you will be here, everybody will be here also for the discussion. That's the best schedule I can come up that everybody is at the meetings. Because if not, we're going to take it way into July.
So you said 17th, that's a regular meeting.
It is also, so we would.
We can change it to the 18th.
Amy, are you able to make, but we would still be interviewing on the 3rd, and you're not going to be here.
Correct, and that's fine. Go. I'm not saying hold up because of me.
I didn't say you were, but I think the mayor's point is right.
You're gone the whole month of, the whole week of the 10th.
I'm gone that entire week.
Okay, so, and then you're gone the
Week
3rd.
before that,
Yeah. So But we will bring them back after this anyway, you're saying? Or no, we'll have a decision, they would be taped. Yeah, on the 17th, we would make a decision. So either one would be missing, and you would have to watch videotape.
I'm fine with that.
We might have to do that.
It's totally fine with me.
So June 3rd for the second round interviews, and we're going to switch I'll make sure, well, Jade is there, so we'll switch the meetings. The regular meeting on the 3rd will be switched to the 10th, and we do interviews on the 3rd. 5:30 again?
Yeah, so then I'd propose that June 24th would be a regular session, and June 10th would be a regular session, and then study session would be on the 3rd, and study session would be on the 17th, and then we'll use those as
Okay,
as
so
the 3rd and the 17th.
the discussion night, I had here the 17th, but we need that night for a,
You want to say that again? Okay, so it would look like what on June 3rd would have to be, we'd move it to be a study session. Right now it's a regular. June 10th, we would move to a regular meeting.
What would we be doing on the 3rd?
June, we'd be interviewing, right?
second round.
I think we should plan on 5:30. I just don't think we need to get up and move around.
No, that's fine.
5:30 to 9:30, okay. And then on the 10th, what would we be doing?
The 10th is just a regular meeting. We'd have a regular council meeting. We can have an hour study session before in a regular meeting. And then June 17th, we'd have to move it to a study session, and then start at 5:30 again.
And we would be doing
Decision-making that night, right? Yeah.
That is the only slide that stays the same.
Well, and if it would be, Councilmember Martinez can look at the tapes. Yeah, we all can look at the tapes to make our final prior to that. Yeah.
And that night would be the discussion decision.
Yeah. And then the 24th, just to see it out, would be a regular meeting. So just for your own schedule that you would know what.
Study session.
Well, it is a study.
Regular study session.
No, it would have to be moved to a regular, so we get two in the month. Yeah, it was a study session. Yeah, the 10th and the 24th. Each one of them would flip to what they weren't.
Exactly.
Right. So the 3rd becomes a study, the 10th becomes a regular, the 17th becomes a study.
And at 5:30 to 9?
Yeah, let's do that. I mean, we can always end early and be happy. Everyone's happy when we end early.
Okay, so now that we have the schedule, thank
Yeah.
you for being so accommodating. We need to discuss on the public engagement of the top 3 candidates. How much, where, what time, I mean, how long, what format the council wants the top 3 candidates to engage with the public. And I'm totally open here. I mean, we need to make do you want them to come in with a prepared subject and make a presentation and take questions from the public? And it can be any subject. I mean, we can talk about infrastructure or capital improvement or how to get better with parks. Or, I mean, you tell me what subject you want to hear from them aside from the interviewing, so they can make a presentation to public and they can take questions from public. Or
That's hard for me when we don't know what the things are leading up to it. We don't know what the questions are at each level. For me, the very last one would be, I'd need to see all the first ones to know what we're asking.
no, this is candidates with the public from the
Right.
city. I mean, they need to engage with
But the public's going to see all of this, so I think all of us need to know what will we be missing, what will we get more of on the final one that would be helpful for the public. But you're right, a topic could help, but I'd like to know what the...
Yeah, and I mean,
So
we
the
don't have to
interview
decide
questions
tonight
are-
on the topic, but I would like to decide on the format so we can start preparing I mean, do we get them an hour? I mean, do we plan for an hour of the candidates with public in this room, for example? Or we can make it in Hamden Hall so they can have, I mean, I need to start working on some sort of format for that meeting. What is it that you would like to see the candidates doing with the public? Or you just want them to just socialize, I mean, be more informal? I mean, that's what I'm asking. What is it that council wants to see so we can start working on format, planning?
So historically, and I'm not saying this is what we have to do because this is the way we've done it before. That is not all what I'm saying. But historically, when we did the chief of police, the city manager, and the city attorney. We had a meet and greet where everyone could interact with them on their own. It was kind of a milling. Everybody spoke for about 5 minutes. So that's what's been done in the past, but that doesn't mean we have to do it in the future. Councilmember Sierra.
Yeah, because we're talking about 3 candidates here. What I was thinking is it would be give them a chance to present something that they may have missed during their presentation, and then have it just be a meet and greet. And thinking Hampton Hall would probably make a lot of sense where, yeah, they could just talk to the community. So I think that does make sense. I don't think there needs to be a specific topic because I think we may be boxing them in, and I do really want them to state what's on their mind and why they're best for the position when they're speaking to the constituents.
Councilmember Martinez?
I would agree. Maybe just some brief statements about themselves, why they want this job, and then meet and greet with the community. I don't think it needs to be any more formalized than that. I think even in this room would be fine. Yeah, I think it should be pretty loose and casual.
Yeah, that's the idea, to have your feedback so we can plan it.
Councilmember Berentine.
They kind of can get a little waylaid by certain groups in the meet and greet kind of portion of it. So if there's some way, I don't mind the more informal meet and greet, but if there's some way that we could keep it moving a little bit more. And to the mayor's point, I think that I would like to see it be maybe a little bit longer presentation from each of them rather than just 5 minutes. People can barely say hi with that. But if they spend some time saying this is who I am and then saying this is what I see in your community or some kind of topic that comes off of that so that there's some kind of apples to apples comparative feel for people on how they're handling that question. We won't know what that topic is until we see some of the other issues. I think you've made a very good point. But I'd like to see them present a little bit longer and find a way to make sure that we have some better flow for the meet and greet piece of it as well.
I keep missing your
so
Mayor Pro
Sorry,
Tem
go
also,
ahead.
I'm sorry, I keep missing her thing. I think it's a great idea. Keep going, Mayor Pro Tem.
Were you done?
No, I think I'm done.
Okay.
That's okay.
And it's okay if you miss it. I'll let you know. I won't let you pass
Okay.
me by. I'm not, and I agree with what's been shared so far. I just, give them an opportunity to introduce themselves and then have some interaction, with people from the community. I think another thing that I remember from when Mr. Keck came on board, that group of people, we did that, we interacted, and I wasn't on council at the time. And there was opportunities for citizens to write notes about who they liked and why. I mean, there were just little cards or...
So this is the way I envision this. I mean, a half-an-hour presentation on themselves and the topics that are important. If you want to give them topics as we move along, that will be fine. We're going to have them here all day because they also have to get a tour of the city so they can see, what the city is about before they go into an interview. And they need to have some sort of interaction with staff. So that's the next topic. How much do you want staff to pry into the interaction? So we can have 2 hours for every candidate. So one of them will be on the tour, the other one will be interacting with the public, and the other one will be with staff. And then they rotate. Before you do, then we'll give them, a little time to rest, to be ready for the interviewing.
But that would mean the public would have to be here all day.
Yeah, hang on a second. I think I'm misunderstanding what you're saying too. So what is happening that evening? Is it our final interview with them or is it an added on public time?
That day, I mean, we have the candidate for the whole day. So we need to stagger them. So again, the public has different times that they can come meet them.
During the day?
During the day, or
I don't think we can expect citizens. I'm sorry. What others?
okay, so you rather do it at night. Okay, so we can do the public interaction. One is here interviewing, the other one is with the public. I mean, we can do that as well.
So we just set a time for 5:30 that night
That's for interviewing.
That's for us to interview them.
Yes.
So, okay.
That's
So
your
now
second interview.
Yeah, I don't think the public will come during the day. It'll just be those who don't have work or have the day off or maybe are retired and.
So we can plan on having them here 2 days, if that's better. Since we have time from the interview to the council, we can have them here for 2 days and having one night with council and one night with the public. If that's easier.
How would it be okay? I mean, how would you leverage the daytime hours for those 2 days?
We can do a staff interviewing and we can do the tour. I mean, we can have them here. Yeah.
What needs to be done
Yeah.
without wasting time?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, I would recommend that the first day they show up basically for the interviews, and then the second day, they could do the rest of
And
it.
they can work on with the staff and whatever we need to do, the tours, and then they interact with the public on the second day. And we're gonna have feedback forms from the public. I mean, we want them to tell us which one they like, and also from staff, so we can give them to you for the discussion. So you can have, all of you will have, not all the forms for the public. We will do a summary for you with all the comments from the public and the comments from the staff. So you have that information when you're gonna make your decision for the 17th.
Councilor Valentine.
I think they spent some time when they first got here to go into the community and get a feel for the community and kind of talk to people, know what Breakfast Queen was, or the Englewood Grand, or they could see where the Platte is. I mean, especially if they're not from the area. So I would prefer the 2 days, because I'm glad we vetted this out, because otherwise we were going to, the public wouldn't be very happy with that. So if we could have it the second night, then are you talking about having the?
So now are we in a conflict again with people's schedules?
Yes.
Because we all want to be there to watch their interaction with the public too.
Yeah, well, the people that is here can be at the interactive with the public. If not, we can record it for council member Sierra, and he can watch it. I mean, he can watch it on video, the interaction with the public.
So that interview night we're talking about, just for clarification, is from the 3rd?
Yes.
And then we would be talking about then having them stay on the 4th for the public piece. Well, you're the one it affects, so it's up to you.
I think it's actually me. I'm out that week. You're here, right?
He's leaving the 4th.
He lives on the 4th. So it would be
it's
both of
two.
you then.
Yeah.
It's 2 of you. So I'm sorting some of this through now. We've done it different for each candidate. We didn't have you here all day, did we? And did we interview you during the day?
No, you started out with the breakfast meeting.
That's right.
And then met all the candidates at a breakfast meeting. Spent the day going around the community, and then the interviews. I think the interviews were day 2.
I think they were. So both with the city manager and with the city attorney, we set aside a full day. People took off work. It was a real bummer. I mean,
No,
for those
not
who
for,
couldn't.
not for the city manager.
No,
Is
no.
that
I mean,
not?
it's important to do, and I can do that. But I think we got to be really careful about infringing on
council,
people's
you mean.
work.
Council did.
Yeah, council did. Yeah.
We can, I mean, if you want to do that, I don't know if you are available on the 3rd in the morning, and we can have the interaction with the public in the afternoon.
But that's what made
gotta be
it
in-
possible to do the evening public thing. But if we're talking about daytime now, that's completely different.
If we change to daytime, then we could put the meetings back where they belong.
Very good.
Mayor Pro Tem, be quiet. The public wants to participate as well as all of council, and we want to make sure that we're doing the least amount of damage too.
Well, I can, on the 4th or the 6th,
No, we're talking about the 3rd.
I know, but if you're going to have 2 days, if you're doing 2 days, you're talking about the 4th in the daytime too?
No, I was talking.
Just the 3rd would be the daytime for the
If
council.
we do the 3rd on the morning interview with council, then we can do staff and tour, and they can do public in the afternoon. So they will be here only 1 day on the 3rd. But I don't know if council is available in the morning to do interviews. That's my question.
Let's find out about that now. Can anybody take the 3rd and do that? Can anybody not?
I don't like moving the public to the afternoon.
Oh, no, it would be in that, I think would be still an evening,
that's not what you
right?
said.
That's not what you're saying?
Well, but what I'm suggesting is that we could use the study session time before the council meeting to meet with the
Yeah.
public.
Yeah, I think the public thing can still be that evening.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. On
Right,
the 3rd,
that's what I thought you were saying.
council
Okay.
does the
Yes.
interviewing in the morning.
During the day.
During the day.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't have to be 6 a.m. in the morning. It can be 11. So council does the interview during the day, and then in the afternoon, study session time, we can do the interactions with the public, with the 3 candidates.
So she's working on afternoon being 5 o'clock because of your, right?
But that's what
That's
you said. You
afternoon.
want the public to come after work.
It's just a cultural, it's tarde.
Oh, so
When is tarde?
yeah, I mean 5 o'clock. We don't say goodnight until 6 p.m.
No,
so-
I know, I know. I work with someone who keeps saying, well, we'll do it in the afternoon, and she means 5 p.m. I'm like, oh, okay,
Yeah,
early evening.
sorry, okay.
Okay.
Evening.
So 5:30, we will do the public thing still.
Yes,
And,
yes,
but we
I'm
will have
sorry.
interviewed the 3 candidates during the day on Monday the 3rd.
Yeah.
Okay. Does that work for everyone? Is there anybody that, and please be honest about this. These are people's jobs. Okay. Councilmember Cuesta. Okay.
For me as well, I think I have yet to miss a meeting, and I take it very serious. I'm very dedicated to what my commitment is, but to continue to take work days off like that is extremely difficult.
It's a big
Okay, so
task.
let's go back to the 2 days. So we do the interviewing on the 3rd, and then we do the public on the 4th at 5 p.m. In the evening. On the 4th in the evening.
I can't do the 4th. And you have 2 out on the 4th already, so that'd be 3 of us out. I mean, we never talked about the 4th because they were already out, so I didn't.
But I don't want to have the candidates here 3 days. Can we do it
No.
on Sunday?
That's the problem with
Could
this.
we, on the 3rd, will we already know who they are?
Oh yeah, you know who they are. Yes, you have picked the top 3.
We don't have mystery people showing up.
Well, no, what I'm saying is have we already narrowed it down by the 3rd? And so if we've already narrowed it down by the 3rd, then we could have the meet and greet before we interview them.
We could. And, or, I don't understand why we just wouldn't, we interview them all day Monday and they do the meet and greet that night. I don't understand why that's a problem.
Because people cannot come during the day to interview.
Oh, yeah.
I know it's hard. I know it's hard. It's hard to set up everybody's schedule.
No, that's right.
The other thing that we can do, but you said you want to be on the meet and greet, is have the meet and greet while you interview. So I have one out doing the meet and greet with the public, and I have one in here interviewing with you. But you said you want to be on the meet and greet.
Do we absolutely have to be there for the meet and greet?
I think we should be. I really do. I shifted in my thinking during the meet and greet on a couple of different candidates over time. So
Again, I agree. It's important that you see how they interact with your constituents. Yes.
we still
I
got
totally
great
agree.
people, but
Yeah.
my view shifted and you got a whole nother perspective of them.
Can we do it on Sunday, the meet and greet?
No,
The
I
2nd.
don't think so. I mean,
we can invite the public and have refreshments. On the 2nd.
I wouldn't object to that. I mean, we all do things in the evening, if tardy, whenever, if maybe we could make it a little bit earlier, like a 4:30 or 5 o'clock thing, so that it's not too late, because people like to get their stuff done on Sunday night, but.
okay, dear husband, if you're listening, it's your 65th birthday that night. We might not be doing anything.
We can do it.
It's on tape now. I just don't think Sunday, I think that's weird, but. Councilmember Martinez.
What about midday on Sunday? If we want to reserve the evening, if maybe it's more of an afternoon thing, like 2 o'clock for the meet and greets.
Yeah, we can do 2 to 5. I mean, no. It's baseball season, but
Yeah.
I agree with the mayor. Now Sunday just sounds
Just feels weird. Let me ask city attorney and city manager, what do you think about the Sunday thing? Is that I mean, have you ever seen that before?
Yes, leave it to me. Leave it to me.
She's grasping for straws now.
I don't mind doing. I just expecting the public to do it and come out on a weekend just feels weird.
I'll go on Monday during the day. I will commit to come and interview then on Monday. So if we still have one council member that wouldn't be able to do it then, and he says soft commit.
I was just going to say that I think experimenting with a Sunday, you might get a lot more citizens involved. It's hard to, rush home from work and feed the kids, and on a Sunday afternoon, it might provide more flexibility. That was my take when you suggested it.
Nothing going on June. I mean, a lot of people are free on Sunday afternoon.
It's also graduation season, although that's not my problem with that day, but it might be other people's.
Well, I think there's always going to be conflicts in dates and schedules, so we just need to, our purpose of this is to get the most amount of citizen communication with our potential candidates, so I think we should do whatever we think is going to be the most convenient time for our citizens.
Okay, if you all think that people come on a Sunday, I don't mind coming. I just don't want to put them in an imposition them in. It isn't.
And I think Sunday is probably more convenient than, like, a lot of people are also, Monday night isn't convenient either. They work, they go to school, they have to come home, they have to do homework, they have to do all that stuff, and then maybe consider coming.
So they would come in on Sunday morning, perhaps, and they would
Can arrange for a tour so they know when.
Well, no, the tour could still be on Monday, right? And then the evening we would interview them. But Sunday afternoon would be a tea time with the
tea time
with the candidates.
I was thinking more brunch, but
Pushing it to Sunday because it's not convenient for us any other day, not necessarily because it's more convenient for the public. So I don't know that we're really making the decision based on the public. Just that's the only time.
So if we don't do Sunday, it seems like what we need to do is get commitments to take a day on the 3rd to make it work. Otherwise, I guess.
Yeah, I mean.
Unfortunately, have these things that have been on my schedule for over a year. I can't change them.
No, and that's what I wanted to bring it early on, so we can get this on the schedules, because if not, it's going to get more complicated. It doesn't get any easier.
I'm open either way. If you want to do it Monday, then I will make the commitment to do it Monday. If you want to do it Sunday afternoon, whatever.
And
totally open. It's up to you.
She suggested like 11 o'clock. She didn't say, she said it wouldn't be 6 a.m., but like an 11 or something to do the interview. So
You need at least 1 hour per candidate, and you do want time in between, so.
3 or 4 hours.
Yeah, so I would say 4 hours.
when we did this with the city manager before, we started at 8 a.m. and went till noon and we were done. That's how we did it.
Again, I'm happy to put this on the calendar unless it's certainly not ideal, but this is an important.
Councilmember Wing?
I'm in the same boat. So it's not that I don't want to do it, but to commit and then
Yeah.
something pressing is there, then it's going to be sticky.
Well.
So I'm happy to put it on the calendar for
Okay,
now, for sure.
I have stuff that day too, but I think I can cancel them, so I will just cancel them. But I don't want you to be not being able to be there. I can be there. I'll cancel the stuff because I have control over it that day, but other days I don't. And you can do a half day on Monday, 8 to noon?
Make it work, yeah.
It would really be a half day.
not 8 to noon. I thought we were still having the meet and greet then that evening. If
Okay.
we did Monday at 11, then we were just doing the whole day through.
We could do noon to 4 or something.
Yeah, we can
then.
do noon to 4, and then, have the meet and greet right after.
Okay.
Yeah, so do afternoon instead of the morning.
We can even do 1, so it's not that early for the public. I mean, we do 1, they finish at 2, they can do I'll work with the schedule.
Don't
So
talk us out of it because we were getting.
Yeah, I think let's block off noon to 5, okay? It's an afternoon off. From work if you have to get out of things. Let's do that, and then let's come back. We've got a couple weeks.
We wouldn't have to do anything after the meet and greet. It would be noon to 5.
Right.
noon
And
to
then
6,
we,
because they're coming at 5. The citizens are coming at 5. We're going to have a couple hour thing there, so it's going to be at least until 6.
oh,
4 to
that's a
6,
great way to do it, yeah.
6:30,
Do you think the public would get here by 5?
30,
Or we,
5:30. Yeah, so I think maybe
Heavy
afternoon.
fact.
Let's block off noon to 5, but I think we should come later, probably. We can talk about it.
We can, let's block it off and then come
so
and
yeah,
figure
I'll-
out the
I'll plan
specific
it.
time. Because maybe it's 1 to 5 and then the meet and greet is at 6:30 for the public. We have a break. People can, I don't know.
What we can do is, and I mean, I need to look at the room, so we can have one candidate in each room and people can rotate.
Oh. We had them all in this room before. It's like a preach off.
Okay, so you want but remember you want
Teach
them
off.
to make a presentation of half an hour of who they are, so we want them to present at different times.
No, 10 minutes.
I think,
10 minutes
yeah.
each person
How about
in
if we,
front of each other.
how about we give everybody 12 minutes?
12 minutes.
And then we get through, and then we do meet and greet. Now, I love your idea, Councilmember Barentine, to make sure that we're moving people like a speed dating thing almost, because some people did sort of get accosted and they were just stuck there. I think if we said, all right, shift again, so that we keep people moving.
For the 12 minutes, and what you suggested was half of that time is for a topic, they know that ahead of time, and half of that time, if they so desire, is for them to introduce themselves. And that's with the whole room,
Yep.
town hall style, with everybody here.
I think that's great.
Okay. Staff involvement. That's the last question I have on my.
I'm sorry, what was it?
Inkwell. Staff involvement.
Oh.
How much do you want the staff to be involved with the candidate? Do you want the staff to do a full-blown interview for an hour with a panel of directors, or you rather have them do a meet and greet with a lunch or a breakfast, or I mean?
I'd love for all the directors to have at least a 1-hour interview with them all.
Okay.
And then give their feedback.
Okay. Right.
It's just feedback. I mean, I think value the way that they present themselves to that.
And then, as I said, we're going to have feedback forms from the public and feedback form from staff for you before the last slide. The 17th.
I just said my piece, but do you all agree with that, with directors?
I do. I think it's going to be
Okay,
really
does anybody not agree?
No problem on how we make sure that the staff can go ahead and present our feedback.
Okay. How we do, yeah.
Right. I mean, if we're going to respect that, then I think that there has to be some anonymity to what they're doing. I
Yeah.
don't know whether they're going to try and do it as a group, but if they're doing it individually for how they think that person affects their group, they may be a great public works person, and maybe they don't feel so good about
Sorry, I just want to remind everybody of
that they might feel differently.
Yeah.
And so somebody's great here and not great here, but to respect that, I'm not quite sure, because you never want, and it happens all the time, everybody always ends up knowing how council ends up voting for everybody, but I would prefer that the staff have some opportunity to feel comfortable and empowered to give their feedback and make sure that they're not going to worry that somebody that's going to be hired might potentially get that. Because they might end up having some good feedback that could make them they might not be pro them, but they might give feedback that would help them.
City Manager Hargrove, do you remember how we did? I somehow remember you giving a summary of what directors said, or maybe it wasn't you. Maybe it was the HR director. I don't remember.
The directors met with City Council, and we were asked, what we thought. The directors sort of took a vote on their top 3 candidates, and then we presented a summary, but then you asked us individual questions. I must say that I agree with Councilmember Barentine that a perhaps more formal process, the interview questions that we would ask would be uniform, and everyone could write their notes, and we could share that with council, so that it wouldn't be the majority of the directors, or this is Dorothy's pick, because that's not what this is about.
And I remember that you didn't rate them 1, 2, 3. It was just these are our 3 candidates, right? Yeah, that you all, and they're, for us, it was exact same for the council, I think.
We don't have to rank them. We can just give you the notes. I mean, a summary of the discussion, and you will make the decision. I mean, you have the top 3. Right. We interview them and give you our feedback, the notes from the interviews.
Of each.
Yeah, we don't have to rank them. We don't have to select. We just give you or the summary of the discussion among directors or the notes.
I think we asked if they saw any red flags too. What if there was an area where they were concerned, what would we need to address with that person? Or at least I'd love something like that. Councilmember,
Yeah.
you had your.
Sounds like we're set. No, there's no need for me to repeat anything. Let's keep moving.
Okay. Is everybody okay with where we're headed? I mean, we've got to still hammer out questions.
One more, and that is that how are we going to get...
Put the microphone up, I guess.
Oh, sorry. How do we get, was there any process for feedback when they met with, like the other way around? Are we going to incorporate some of that into the interview questions? Because that'll be happening before the interview or after? The staff will be happening after. Before, okay. So can we just at least make sure that we incorporate something into the questioning so that we get the candidates' feedback from their interaction with staff as well?
You mean, is it in case there's something missing, we want to ask something further, are you thinking?
Well, I mean, if it's important to get the feedback from staff and how they feel about that interaction, I would like to know how, their impression, their feedback on them working with the staff that they just had an interview with as well. So I'd at least like that to be incorporated into some of the questioning.
Okay, so
I can see where you're going with that. I would prefer to do our own and have you all do your own. We have different perspectives, and then we see what each other come. I don't want to be skewed by what they think. I want to do it kind of.
Oh no, you misunderstand.
Okay.
I mean, they have just been interviewed by the staff.
Yeah.
So they've had a different kind of interaction with them. I want their impression or how they're going to be working or how they feel they can work with the staff.
Okay, the
As a result
candidate.
of that meeting, what are some of the strengths that you think you'll have working with this staff? What are some of the challenges kind of thing? Maybe a little bit more
You're talking
defined
about
than
the
that.
candidate.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's why I wanted to know whether they were meeting with them before or after the interview. So
Those would be a
that
great
would
set
be
of
fine.
questions to incorporate into ours. If now you've met our staff, I think we did that with the city manager, and they had some very specific things that they noticed. So I think it's great. Let's make sure we ask those kinds of questions.
Yeah, I make a note so
Okay,
I can
great.
work with Heidi
think-
on the question.
Do we have everything then that you need?
Yes, I mean, the 17th, everybody's okay with that. We said 5:30, and that's when you make the decision, and then we'll
Move it to-
wait for the regular meeting. You can make your decision official, and then we work on the contract. So we should have somebody.
Okay, great. All right. We'll send out the dates tomorrow to remind everybody.
Yeah, I'll put something together and send it to everybody.
Make the decision on the 17th.
We make the decision on the 17th and then go to negotiations, right?
Yes, I mean, we
Make an offer.
Yeah, the 17th is a study session, so you cannot vote. But we can discuss it, and then you vote on the 24th. I
24th.
believe that will be the next regular meeting. You vote, and then we'll go to negotiations.
24th. Okay, that's why that's a city council meeting.
Yeah.
Councilmember Cuesta.
To go through that one more time. So we'll make a determination in study session of those final three of who we would care to vote on the dais.
Yep.
Then we
Yes.
select publicly on the dais. We would formalize that. We would make that vote. Then we go to negotiations with the person, and it makes sense to me that would be the case. But
Yes.
we got jammed up on this a little bit last time with the interim.
I think we need to decide what the range is and let them, and let her go at it. But you're right.
Already.
It's already there. So, I mean, if we have a trouble with the top line, we need to know that now.
Yeah, that's a discussion that you have with Heidi. She told me that you already talk about the range between yourselves and her. So it shouldn't go out of that range. She knows what the range is already, so.
We could reserve, this is a good question though, because could we reserve the 24th for any executive session if we needed to talk about something related to the?
There's almost nothing you can do about selecting an executive.
I don't know that they're picking you up.
There's almost nothing you can do associated with the selection of an executive employee in an executive session.
But not even the finances.
Yes, you can meet in executive session to discuss issues of negotiation.
That's what I meant. Not who the candidate is, but if we get into particulars on negotiations,
Yes.
benefits or whatever. It could be something weird that came out, I don't know.
But instead of stating publicly, this is as high as I'm willing to go, so that the individuals watching, they come back and they get that number, that's the kind of stuff that really needs to be stated in an executive session.
But we already know what the range is.
Yeah.
So,
You said, what you just said is, if something unusual happens,
Yes.
can we go into executive session to discuss negotiations? And my answer is yes.
Okay.
You've already come up with a range, but if the individual says, I know that's your range, but I need $10,000 a year more, that's what you're going to have to discuss. If you're willing to come back with a $5,000 a year more, or anyway, those are some of the things I can see happening.
okay. Councilmember Barentine.
I would like us all to agree right now that we don't do that. That we interview people, they already know what the range is, and if they're going to do that, then they should understand up front we're not going to hire them. That's going to put us in a very difficult position. So if we interview them and they already know what the range is, and then they go ahead and pull that on us at the last minute, that's not the person I want running the city.
Or they want to live in Washington and do it from there.
So if we can agree that that's not going to happen, the other issue would be we're deciding on the 17th, which is a study session.
Yeah, but we can change your mind when you come on the 24th.
Okay.
I think you're ranking your candidates on the 17th.
Yeah, you have the discussion about the three and you rank them, and we let Heidi know, and she will know which candidate one is. And then you cannot vote on a study session, so you have to have a regular meeting to vote who will be your number one candidate that we are going to start negotiation with.
So my question is that we're only discussing in the study session, but then we vote on the 24th. But they know that, okay, never mind. I think I'm okay with that. And then that issue about the salary was what you were talking about for just the 24th.
That's what arose last time.
Yeah.
And that's what
Pretty
happened
awkward.
last time. Okay.
Mayor Pro Tem.
So are we going to have another meeting with Heidi? I mean, she's going to be back here, so we can talk about things to end run before we get into trouble.
Oh, yeah, we better.
She's coming on the 22nd of May.
Okay.
To present the candidates. So you are going to have a meeting with her. She's going to be all yours here on the 22nd. So.
Okay. Thank you.
And everybody has May 22nd on their calendar, right? So that's an important evening just set aside for this.
I will clean it out and send the schedule to everybody. And we'll copy Heidi on it. I mean, she knows about these dates, Heidi.
So the 22nd, 28th, 30th, then June 3rd, 17th, 24th, right?
Yep.
Okay.
We're having the date sent to us tomorrow.
We will.
All right, so
But if you want to get them in there tonight, you're going to earn your pay for the.
Oh, I'm sorry. I know everybody wants to go home with this.
All right. So anything else on this? We're ready to move on? All right. Council members' choice. Start with, who wants to begin? Anybody? Start with anybody who passes. Councilmember Sierra, do you want to start? Okay, Councilmember Barentine.
I want to do a council request to make sure that the next meeting we have about the emergency operation plan that we have the fire marshal here. I have questions about the position and want to make sure that we get this clarified not only for us but for the public, as well as the statements that were made. I had it handed out to all of you. And the rest of it, I think I'll wait until we're in council chamber, because I think I want to just make sure that we reiterate that what the priorities are about what we're focusing on moving forward, on how we're scheduling and what we're willing to spend precious time talking about. So that's all I have.
All right. Thank you. As you go through, would you respond to whether you want to have the fire marshal here or not? I mean, that's one person asking for it. Are there enough people to ask for that? That's a person coming after hours. And we've already been told by the city manager what her role supposedly is. So, Mayor Pro Tem, you're next.
The only council request that I have is kind of it's in response to the answer that I got, but I do want an answer for this. The council request I asked last week how many of the employees that were terminated had non-disclosure agreements. And so the answer was none. So my next question is, if there is none, then those that have non-disclosure agreements aren't bound by the agreement they have. I mean, I'm just saying that they're free to talk about whatever. So that may be something the city attorney wants to address.
Can I ask a question, please? Please?
Can we, let's let
Okay.
it, I would prefer yeah, let's.
The other thing we were to weigh in, I believe that if we are talking about emergency management again, I think that's kind of been put on hold a little while. I mean, I am okay to have the fire marshal here. I believe there are questions. Actually, I'm okay to have the fire marshal here.
So you agree you want to have her here? It's not just being okay, you want her here. Okay, Councilmember Wink?
I have no report this evening, and I am grateful for the clarification that the interim city manager provided on the role of the fire marshal, and so I don't think it's necessary to bring the fire marshal here, so I'm not in favor of that.
Okay. Councilmember Cuesta?
I do have one. I had a neighbor contact me over the weekend. They were at Rotolo Park, and they had concerns with dogs that are off-leash. Rotolo Park is now one of our off-leash dog parks. And they contacted the non-emergency number, and the non-emergency response person that they spoke with said, we don't enforce that on the weekend. This person told me pretty quickly replied, if it's a vicious dog, they'll come out. But if it's just folks off leash, the gentleman was there with his very young grandchild, and he was concerned. Even beyond, the dogs off leash, I think his greater concern was it almost seemed as though that there was an unwritten policy that it's not enforced on the weekends, and it's really just through the weekdays till 5 p.m. So I was hoping to get some more information on that. If there is any sort of informal policy, or if there's even if folks will not come out on the weekend for calls such as that. Thank you.
Councilor?
Oh, and on the matter of the fire marshal, and I'm sorry, this would be at a study session or a formal
I guess
meeting?
if we had the next time we had a conversation that we didn't have her come.
I will say this: if one of my fellow council members is looking to gather more information, I'm happy to support that.
All right,
Thank you.
Councilmember Martinez.
On the having the fire marshal here, excuse me, I think it's going to largely depend on the topic of the discussion. If it's just about getting the additional information we requested from Arapahoe County, I don't know that it makes sense to have her there. So for me, it really depends on the topic and the parameters of the discussion. So I don't think it's necessary to have her at all of our upcoming discussions on this topic.
Okay.
I think it'll depend on what the actual topic is and how we want her to play a role in that.
Okay.
So,
anything else tonight?
yes, I just want to congratulate the chamber on their new executive director, David Carroll.
Stole my thunder.
The chair of the Culture Arts Commission. So he is going to do a great job, and that's really exciting for the chamber and for David. So, yeah.
Great. Councilmember Sierra, do you want to add in on fire marshal?
Yeah, actually, I agree with Councilmember Martinez. Depending on the topic, if it's a future-looking about the EOP, I don't think it's necessary. If we're trying to figure out lessons learned, then yeah, possibly bring her in. But yeah.
Okay. All right, Councilmember Barentine, you have your light on. Are you asking another question follow-up or? Yeah, I think we're almost done. So if you have a council request, can you just send it by email? Okay.
I have a question.
Okay.
I had a question of Councilmember Mayor Pro Tem.
Okay. If in her answering it, you want to do something new, send it to me or to the manager.
I had a clarification on the Mayor Pro Tem's request.
Okay.
Since the Mayor Pro Tem said that she was responded to, that there were no employees currently or terminated or who have left the city who have non-disclosure agreements,
then can we all agree as a council then that any employee can come forward, any whistleblower, anybody who has concerns or issues is free to speak to the city and to this council to provide any information that they wish to provide, and there will be no retribution, no funds taken away from them, no repayment of anything, that no agreement would stop them from being able to openly discuss whatever they think should be discussed to this council or to this community.
I'm going to shut that off right now because that's an agenda item that we would be doing. So let's, if that's a request to have on a study session to talk about how, I'd like to know.
Was
what
it
the attorney-
accurate, the answer that the Mayor Pro Tem got, that nobody has
You're
no
asking for
disclosure?
us to make a decision tonight. Let's put that
I'm
on
not
the-
asking for a decision. I'm asking the people who provided the information on a council request if the information she was provided is correct and that there are no non-disclosure agreements on any employees.
Well, you asked if council would agree tonight that they could come forward at any point. So let's get the council request done and let's move on, okay? So you
could I have
don't
them-
ask.
Is her answer correct or not? That there are no non-disclosure agreements that prevent anybody from giving that information?
I'm assuming the answer I got is correct.
Okay, thank you very much.
Oof, okay, let's see, a couple things on my count. I met with the folks doing census for cities. They are meeting with all the mayors in the metro area one by one by one. I had a 30-minute meeting with them today, so I will be putting them in touch with Dorothy here so that she can find out what the staff would do with this and if there's any kind of response council needs to take in relationship to what needs to be done. It's a very interesting process. It's a little different than before, but so I want to get all that info to you all. And it'll probably have to happen pretty quick because they want to get going and have some kind of affirmation. They're not asking for money or anything. They're asking for participation in something, but they need to talk with you because that's the right way to. They haven't talked to you yet, have they?
No.
Okay,
No.
great. And then, yes, the chamber, great. Is anybody else going tomorrow night to the gala besides myself? Just two of us? Okay, I just wanted it to be public. And congratulations to David Carroll. And then also, oh my goodness, I'm blanking. The what? Police station, thank you. On Thursday, we have a big, wonderful kind of ribbon cutting celebration. And please come between 3 and 6, I believe, right? Maybe that's what you were going to say anyway. So I'll turn it over to you.
And the remarks will begin at 3:30 and tours, so invite your friends and neighbors, and it should be a good celebration.
Anything else?
We can come at any time during that.
Yes. Yes. I do have a couple of
Manager?
things.
Okay.
Sorry, I'll rush through them. Speaking of the census, just last Friday morning, talking to the city managers at Littleton and Sheridan for a proposed agenda for the Tri-Cities meeting, which is coming up on April 12th. They wanted to talk about the census. So we'll have a follow-up question on that. And they also wanted to talk about the Metroplex, the FAA, some of the work that's being done there, and to talk about the Pell work, which is CDOT planning for this corridor. I hope those are all appropriate topics. If there's anything pressing that you'd like to add to that, I could pass that on, and we could still have plenty of time to get the meeting posted, but that sounded like the good basis of a discussion. So, without
In anticipation of that, the census is supposed to send me a whole bunch of links sometime this evening, so I'll make sure those all get out to you tomorrow through Dorothy so that we have them and you can look at them, because my hunch is that what they want to talk about is what's in there.
how to coordinate and how to make sure that we get that.
I haven't
Thank
seen
you.
them yet, so.
One other thing, I wanted to let council know that we've hired a new communications manager. He's not going to join the city until the 6th of May. He's currently the communications manager for South Suburban and had been with the city of Littleton, so he's very experienced, very exciting to be part of our team. His name is Mr. Chris Hargrove. I'm looking forward to having him on board, and we'll make sure that council gets a chance to say hello. Thank you.
Thank you, City Attorney. No report. All right, we are adjourned. 9 o'clock on the dot. Not quite